Chapter 174. As he spoke, he hugged Cow tightly, lowered his head, and heavily kissed her fragrant lips. At this moment, Cow's eyes were filled with surprise. She actually forgot to resist and let Nian Bing kiss her lips. Suddenly, a burst of coolness came from his mind. Nian Bing suddenly discovered that he seemed to have arrived in another world. The pain in his Tian Yin acupoint disappeared, and now he could only feel the fullness in his arms. It was an indescribable feeling of fullness. This feeling stimulated his nerves. He was surprised to find that at this moment, he seemed to have some human feelings. The warmth of the kiss was like the most pure spring water moistening his body. This kind of wonderful feeling was the first time Nian Bing experienced since he turned into a zombie. He didn't know why all this was happening, but the lips he kissed were constantly changing. Sometimes it was as cold as snow, and sometimes it was as hot as fire. In a constant change of ice and fire, completely different airflow was constantly transmitted into his body from these warm and soft lips. Everything seemed to be changing. Nian Bing also wanted to stop all this, but he discovered that a pair of jade-like arms had unknowingly wrapped around his neck. The wonderful feeling continued to rise in this kiss, and Nian Bing's consciousness finally lost at this moment. Nian Bing kissing Amaterasu, in a sense, had a mischievous feeling. Amaterasu was seriously injured, and this was his biggest opportunity, and he would never let go of this opportunity. The moment Nian Bing fell into the lake, an unusually large amount of death energy in the surroundings immediately surrounded his body, although he was an undead. This death energy couldn't destroy him. But in the face of the purest death energy, his impure zombie body first had a problem, and that was the change in his body. Under the effect of the pure death energy, the instincts possessed by zombies rose rapidly. The feeling of bloodlust rose to a whole new level, as if it wanted to completely devour Nian Bing's consciousness. Nian Bing said to Amaterasu that he relied on his spiritual power to simulate the form of death energy to escape from the lake. Although this was the truth, it wasn't completely true. Although he had comprehended a certain degree of spiritual power use from Amaterasu's ability, but his comprehension wasn't deep. In a hurry, how could he do it so perfectly? The simulation of spiritual power only allowed Nian Bing to recover some ability to move, and at the same time, his body didn't feel so uncomfortable. What really saved him was the curse of eternal hell, the devil-devouring blade. That's right, it was the devil-devouring blade. When Nian Bing fell into the water, he had been holding the devil-devouring blade in his hand. Just as his body was suffering, the devil-devouring blade was madly absorbing the death energy in the lake of death like a fish in water. Nian Bing wasn't the purest undead, but the devil-devouring blade was the purest dark magic weapon. The pure darkness it possessed was completely the same as the energy in the lake of death. Before Nian Bing could react, the shadow puppet had already appeared on its own and took the devil-devouring blade from Nian Bing's hand. In a flash, the shadow puppet had already forced the lake of death around Nian Bing to retreat. According to the control of Nian Bing's spiritual power, he was thrown out of the lake and entered the waterfall ahead of Amaterasu. Although all of this happened very quickly, Nian Bing could clearly feel the excitement that the shadow puppet transmitted to him. This was the first time the shadow puppet had truly transmitted to him. At that moment, Nian Bing truly confirmed that the shadow puppet had very high intelligence. Through the connection between their spiritual power, the shadow puppet told Nian Bing to delay as much as possible so that it could absorb more death energy. Then, it would launch a sneak attack from behind to create an opportunity for Nian Bing. Therefore, after Nian Bing entered the waterfall, he first threatened Amaterasu with the fruit. Although everything he said after that was reasonable, he didn't have any certainty in his heart. Even he himself didn't believe what he said, which made Amaterasu full of doubts. When Nian Bing sensed Amaterasu's murderous intent towards him, he knew that he couldn't wait any longer. Therefore, he took advantage of that short gap to attack Amaterasu while summoning the shadow puppet. In a short period of time, the shadow puppet had already absorbed a large amount of death energy. However, it belonged to the darkness element. Although death energy was a great supplement to it, it couldn't absorb so much at once. Therefore, when it received Nian Bing's summon, it immediately mixed all the death energy it had absorbed with the darkness energy and rotated it in a certain way. Coupled with the power of the demon-devouring blade, it launched a sneak attack on Amaterasu from behind. Originally, with Amaterasu's strength, he should have been able to discover the shadow puppet. However, her mind was a little confused by Nian Bing's words. Her perception of her surroundings weakened a little. In addition, Nian Bing's attack also brought her a lot of trouble. In addition, the shadow puppet's attack was very similar to her own energy. Unknowingly, the shadow puppet's attack landed a hit on her vital point. The world was constantly changing. The shadow puppet stared blankly at Nian Bing and the woman in his arms. The demon-devouring blade in his hand was already raised high, but he wasn't sure if he should bring it down. At this moment, everything in the shadow puppet's eyes was too strange. Nian Bing closed his eyes and kissed the woman in his arms as if he was intoxicated. However, the woman in his arms was constantly changing. One moment, it was the dignified god of life cow. The next moment, it was the endlessly charming Amaterasu. In the midst of the constant changes, the aura in the waterfall cave was also constantly changing. One moment, it was filled with the aura of life. The next moment, it was filled with the aura of death. Gnome Shadow Puppet really didn't know what to do. Nian Bing didn't know how much time had passed. He only knew that his kiss was really pleasurable. When he kissed Feng Nu, he had also put his heart and soul into it. However, it definitely didn't have the beauty of energy produced by the fluctuations of his spiritual energy. With the strength of his current spiritual energy, he would only lose his mind in this kind of beauty. Is it still not enough? A shy voice sounded from the depths of his soul. In the next moment, Nian Bing's mind instantly became clear. He pushed the woman in his arms away forcefully and took a few steps back. He almost stepped on a small tree on the ground. The sound of panting came from the opposite side. Nian Bing looked over and saw that the person in front of him was Amaterasu. However, at this time, her delicate face no longer had that layer of deathly pale color, and a faint blush added a bit of beauty in her shyness. Her black eyes were filled with a complicated light. He didn't know what she was thinking. Human, do you know? You're the one who's going to die this time. Amaterasu didn't even look at the shadow puppet beside him. It was as if he didn't exist at all. Nian Bing swallowed his saliva and said indifferently, "If that's the case, then why don't you do it?" Amaterasu shook his head and said, "I won't kill you, but you've done something that makes others have no choice but to kill you." Nian Bing was stunned and said, "I don't understand what you mean. Could it be that because you used a spiritual energy illusion technique, you—" Amaterasu glared at Nian Bing in annoyance. "You're the one who's crazy. So annoying. You took advantage of me, and now you're making sarcastic remarks? I don't care. In any case, you've already taken my first kiss. From now on, you're my man." Nian Bing stared blankly at Amaterasu. These sudden changes made him a little confused. He didn't understand why Amaterasu suddenly changed so much. Looking at Nian Bing's dazed look, Amaterasu chuckled and said, "Although I hate you for taking my first kiss, I also like how you looked just now. Do you know? It's the first time I've seen her suffer such a huge blow that she actually gave up control of her body. It's really interesting." Nian Bing took a deep breath and looked at Amaterasu. He said in a low voice, "What do you mean? With your ability, you can kill me at any time. But if you still want to tease me, that's impossible." Amaterasu took a few steps forward and arrived in front of Nian Bing. He raised his hand and touched Nian Bing's face. At this moment, the shadow puppet that didn't receive Nian Bing's order suddenly moved. Its body rushed forward like an illusion. Its body actually merged with the devil-devouring blade. The devil-devouring blade's volume instantly increased by 3 times. Its body didn't emit a trace of light. However, the blade's body rushed toward Amaterasu's back like a bolt of black lightning. Amaterasu snorted coldly. "You're the one who hurt me just now. You actually used the energy here to hurt me. You're very bold." As she spoke, Her graceful body fluttered in the air. She gently waved her right hand, and black starlight floated out. The starlight was connected by a gray thread, and it coiled around the enlarged demon-devouring blade. The dark heavenly fragrance stomped her left foot on the ground. Scram. Seeing that you're his, I'll spare your life. Since you're willing to absorb it, then go ahead and absorb it. With a flash of black starlight, the devil-devouring blade and the shadow puppet were thrown out together. They fell directly into the lake of death outside. During the process of Amaterasu's actions, Nianbing clearly felt that Amaterasu's spiritual power was tightly locked on his body. He couldn't resist at all. He clearly felt that this time, Amaterasu displayed her true strength. Although she was injured previously, the strength she displayed now made Nianbing deeply feel that it was impossible to resist. It was too strong. The irresistible dark energy instantly boiled to the peak. It was as if Amaterasu had merged with everything around her. She had merged with the entire Green Mountain. All right, I threw that little thing of yours into the lake of death to enjoy. Now we can have a good talk. Clapping her hands as if she had just done the simplest thing, Amaterasu looked at Nianbing with a sweet smile. She raised her hand and gently stroked the scales on his face. She frowned slightly and said, "From your silhouette, you should be a handsome man. How did you become like this? What a pity. I'll definitely help you return to your original appearance." With the suppression lifted, Nianbing could finally speak again. He looked at Amaterasu with some shock. "Your ability is so strong. Why did it seem like I was suppressing you?" "You were suppressing me? Was I? Why didn't I feel it?" "Oh, right. There are two things I want to tell you. Don't think that little thing of yours injured me just now. Although I've vomited blood within the range of this death god waterfall, I won't die. Even if I'm injured, I'll immediately be healed by the surrounding energy. Unless someone can completely destroy this green mountain and expel all the dark energy here, there's no way to truly destroy me. Or perhaps it's better to say, truly injure me. Secondly, didn't you feel that what I said just now was very strange? That's nothing. I just want to tell you that when you kissed me just now, it wasn't an illusion. It was the real god of life, Cow. Your luck is really not bad. You got the first kiss of two beauties in one go. No wonder even you said that your luck was good." Nianbing looked at Amaterasu in a daze and muttered, "You're going to tell me that my previous guess was right? Amaterasu giggled and said, "If you hadn't guessed right and said those strange words to me before, do you think I would be at a disadvantage in this conversation? Yes, you guessed right. I and the god of life, Cow, are one. I am her, and she is me. In the realm of life, it's Cow, and in the realm of death, it's I, Amaterasu. You can call me Tianxiang from now on. That's my name." Nianbing felt a wave of dizziness. He didn't expect that his random guess would lead to such a result. Amaterasu didn't need to lie to him anymore. What she said was true. Then, the one he kissed just now was actually her and Cow. You and Cow's appearance are completely different. How could you be the same person? Could it be that you've been changing all this time? Nianbing really couldn't accept this fact. Although he had said that the death aura and the life aura could be interchanged to a certain extent, he still found it hard to accept when faced with such a situation. Amaterasu smiled and said, "You can think of it however you want. Although it's not as simple as you said, Cow and I can indeed be interchanged. It's just that we're two people, not one. Our real title should be the god of emotions. Sometimes she's her, sometimes she's me, sometimes I'm her, sometimes I'm me." Looking at the puzzled Nianbing, Amaterasu continued, "Do you want to hear her story? Since you're the first person we've had intimate contact with, I'll tell you." Although Nianbing's heart was full of doubts, he gradually felt relieved. At least, he could no longer feel any hostility from Amaterasu. He smiled and said, "All right, I also want to hear the secret between life and death. Oh, when I first saw you, you were clearly a bird. Moreover, I heard that you're the head of the 4 great magical beasts in the continent of gods." Amaterasu laughed and said, "What 4 great magical beasts? I'm not a magical beast at all. You were right at the beginning. That's the appearance of a phoenix. It's just that in order to distinguish myself from a phoenix, I can turn my head black. Magical beasts can transform into humans after cultivating to a certain extent. Why can't humans transform into magical beasts? Nian Bing looked at her in surprise and said, "You're saying that you can transform into a phoenix to confuse people?" Amaterasu smiled and said, "Is there a need for that? Who needs me to confuse them? It's just that I like to transform into that appearance, and when I transform, I'm seen by others. All right, let's not talk about this for now. When you finish listening to our story, you'll naturally understand everything. As the god of emotions, Cao and I are two separate existences, but we also coexist. Do you understand?" Nian Bing's heart moved and said, "The same body, the same soul, each with different abilities, right? If it was someone else, they might not have thought of it, but he had experienced a similar situation before." Amaterasu nodded approvingly and said, "That's right. Just as you said, we share a soul in this body. Originally, my current appearance was our true appearance, but Cao insisted on transforming into another appearance in order to distinguish himself from me. It's simply too ugly. Cao and I were born as co-living beings. If we're talking about age, I'm afraid there's no one older than us in this world. Tens of thousands of years have passed by in a blink of an eye. We've seen too much of the world." Nian Bing couldn't help but ask, "Then who are you people? How can you live for so long? Even dragons might not be able to live for tens of thousands of years." Amaterasu said, "That's right. Even dragons are generally not more than 25,000 years old. But Cao and I have already lived in this world for nearly 50,000 years. We call ourselves the god of 7 days of emotions, every 7 days. We'll swap roles. Before 7 days, it's her, and after 7 days, it's me. Switching between life and death, we've become what we are now. Our souls each occupy half of this body. Neither of us can destroy the other, but neither of us is willing to submit to the other. Therefore, this is the only way to maintain a symbiotic state. Although we're symbiotic when the other side controls the body, we can also feel what's happening in the outside world. Therefore, from the moment you stepped into the realm of life, I already knew about you. Even everything that happened to you on the road was seen by me and Cao. Even we didn't expect that you could actually get the help of those dwarves, and such sincere help at that. Along the way, you've already passed Cao's test. We won't easily save people. Only after you pass our test will we help you restore your vitality. Now you should understand why Cao asked you to come here to find me." Nian Bing smiled indifferently and said, "Then, did I pass your test?" Amaterasu's pretty face blushed slightly and said, "What do you think? You can use all kinds of methods to hurt me. This hasn't happened for tens of thousands of years. After such a long time, I felt the taste of being hurt again. So I lost my mind and gave Cao the opportunity to take control of the body in advance." Speaking to this point, she couldn't help but laugh. Unfortunately, man proposes but God disposes. She probably never would have thought that you would actually do such a thing. Actually, in the end, she lost her mind even more than I did. After a few struggles, I still managed to snatch back her body. I'm afraid that within 10 days, she won't be able to fight against me anymore. You're really amazing. At first glance, I can see that you have a lot of experience in this area." Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, "Experience, maybe I have some. I wasn't originally so ugly. Is there a girl who only likes novelty?" "Amaterasu, I'm very curious about the origins of you 4 true gods. Since you and Cao have lived for 50,000 years, then the other true gods should be about the same. In that case, what's going on with you? Can you tell me?" Amaterasu naturally held Nian Bing's hand. In terms of appearance, she was even half a level better than Feng Nu and Bingyan, especially her charming eyes and perfect coordination with her body. Every simple action brought about a strong temptation. When Nian Bing was held by her ice-cold little hand, his whole body immediately trembled. Fortunately, he was already a zombie, otherwise his heartbeat would have at least doubled. Amaterasu pulled Nian Bing to sit down and said, "You don't have to worry about that saber of yours. The lake of death is only good for a pure undead like it. However, this saber soul of yours is very strange. It's not that I haven't seen super divine weapons before, but it's the first time I've seen such a spiritual saber soul. Moreover, through my spiritual power, it seems to have memories. You have to be careful. Gods and gods of order. Although we are all humans, under the influence of technology, we have already surpassed human existence. The world was destroyed in a war of technology, and we also became one of the main culprits of the destruction of technology. When everything fell into peace and the world was almost completely covered by the sea, we all fell into a deep sleep. This sleep lasted for 30,000 years. 30,000 years. Nian Bing stared blankly at Amaterasu. Even if Nian Bing was smart, he couldn't understand everything she said. What was technology? What did it mean to be covered by the sea? Amaterasu smiled faintly and said, "Don't say you can't understand. Even I don't have a deep understanding of it. When we, who were called the ultimate weapons of war of the gods, appeared, the world was already on the verge of collapse. What we know is directly transmitted to the brain. It's just that we have too much intelligence and a lot of autonomy. That's why we can survive when the world is about to collapse. After 30,000 years, when we woke up from our deep sleep, we found that the world had completely changed. Most of the original continents were swallowed by the sea, and only a very small part was left. These are the three continents you only know of: the Yangon continent, the Lost continent, and the Gods continent. Among them, the Yangon continent is the largest, the Lost continent is second, and the Gods continent is much smaller. Why did the Gods continent have such an environment and so many magical beasts? It's because of the various kinds of radiation left behind after the war that destroyed the human race 50,000 years ago. After 30,000 years of evolution, the creatures that didn't die at that time barely survived, but the Gods continent's environment couldn't be changed no matter what. The composition of the air had a huge change, and the magic era, as the future generations called it, had arrived. The Lost continent was much less affected than the Gods continent. The influence of the radiation only increased the number of magical beasts, and a few more mutated races appeared, such as the dragons, the dwarves, and the elves. They were all creatures that evolved after being exposed to the radiation for many years. The Yangon continent was the least affected, and it almost maintained the original appearance of the human race. It was the human race that developed from the primitive society until today. It could be said that the Yangon continent was the last pure land of the human race. Cow, and I would fight with those three guys almost every 1,000 years, but we all knew that the human society couldn't be baptized, so we chose to fight in the depths of the sea. After 10,000 years, the Lost Empire couldn't stand the slaves on the Gods continent and started a war, which was the War of the Gods. The war lasted for a very long time, and it was also very cruel, but it was a war between the human race, and we prehistoric people wouldn't participate in it. However, at the last moment, a big thing happened on the Lost Continent, and it was the root cause of their destruction. Although the so-called gods on the Gods continent were annoying, they were too cruel, so the other three guys had no choice but to work together to destroy the Lost Empire. Otherwise, this world would really cease to exist. Nian Bing listened to this epic description, and her brain was working quickly. Although she didn't completely understand, she was trying to accept the story that Amaterasu was telling. At this moment, he already had a rough outline in his mind. At the very least, he had a rough idea of what the dark heavenly fragrance was trying to convey. From the meaning of her words, the destruction of the Lost Empire had a special reason. Without waiting for Nian Bing to ask, Amaterasu took the initiative to say, "Originally, existences like us wouldn't participate in the war between the Lost Empire and the Gods continent. But when the war was about to end, the Lost Empire found something that could destroy the entire Gods continent. It was not the power of humans, but something left behind from prehistoric times. It was a neutron bomb with the most powerful energy. You don't need to know what it is, just know its power. The Lost Continent found some prehistoric civilizations, and they used some genetic principles to cultivate the lost warriors. At the same time, they also found out the power of a neutron bomb from the prehistoric materials they found. They thought that the explosion of a neutron bomb was enough to destroy the Gods continent, and at that time, there would be no gods on the Gods continent who could threaten them. Although they didn't know how to use these bullets, they could use magic to detonate them. Therefore, they sent a group of people to secretly bring the neutron bombs to the continent of gods. These people were all strong, and they defeated the gods who stayed behind. Some of the high-level gods, the so-called main gods, were there to guide our existence. Therefore, at the last moment, the main gods were killed. They asked us for help. Originally, we didn't care at all, but when we saw the neutron bomb, we had to do something. The god of destruction, the god of time, and the god of order immediately took action. When the warriors of the Lost Empire were destroyed, they seemed to see that we were afraid of the neutron bomb, so they threatened that there was something similar in the Lost Empire. But they didn't know that it was because of this threat that completely enraged the three gods. You know, the planet we were on was already very weak because of the prehistoric war, and the only places suitable for human survival were these three connected continents. If the neutron bomb exploded, even if it was only one, it was very likely that it would cause the entire planet to collapse. At that time, the human civilization would really fall, and no one would be able to survive. So, the three gods finally agreed to the gods' request and prepared to completely destroy the Lost Empire. At that time, Cal and I could see that they were just putting up a strong front before they died, and that there might not be such a thing on the Lost Continent. However, the god of destruction said that even if there was a possibility, it had to be avoided. They couldn't risk the destruction of the planet to forgive the humans. Under Cal and I's strong arguments, they finally agreed to send the Lost Continent, which had the most prehistoric civilization, away instead of destroying it. So, in the end, it wasn't just the three of them who sent the continent away. Cal and I also participated, but we just secretly provided power for them. With the combined power of the five of us, we completed a space-time transfer. Chapter 175. Nian Bing frowned and said, "Even if that neutron bomb is scary, but how many lives have you destroyed? That's an entire continent." He also said that there aren't many places where humans can survive in this world. After sending away such a continent, how many places are there left? Don't tell me you don't want to think about this. Amaterasu said, "Don't say this to me. Don't forget, I represent evil and death. I don't think too much about these things. Moreover, the Lost Empire was only sent to a parallel space. There are also planets. Perhaps it will be difficult to survive, but might not necessarily be destroyed. Otherwise, what's the point of leaving Miordis's bottle of sealing behind?" Nian Bing's eyes flashed and said, "So you're saying that the Lost Continent might really come back because of Miordis's bottle of sealing?" Amaterasu nodded and said, "The Dragon God has already reported to us about the loss of Miordis's bottle of sealing. Actually, those 7 bottles don't mean anything. The Lost Continent left behind a will saying that whoever can open the seal on the 7 bottles will bring them back. They will serve that person as their master. Actually, it's just a joke. Do you think that a dignified empire will submit to a person? Moreover, opening those 7 bottles won't produce much energy. You can imagine how powerful are the 5 of us true gods combined. How much energy can those 7 bottles have? Actually, those 7 bottles to the Lost Continent is just a positioning function. The only thing that can really bring them back is them. When all the experts on the Lost Continent have enough strength, then they might really come back to this world. The opening of the 7 Miordis's bottle of sealing will guide them. If the Lost Continent really comes back, it won't be that dangerous. It's just another battle with the gods' continent. The Earth gods on the godly mainland will not allow them to do anything." Nian Bing thought for a while and said, "What's enough strength? Don't tell me I need to have strength comparable to you?" The dark heavenly fragrance shook her head and said, "No. Back then, when we used the space-time transfer to send them away, due to the large amount of energy, we were unable to truly cut off the connection between the Lost Continent and this world. Once they found the direction, it would be much easier for them to return. As long as there were a few people who could cast Tier 13 spells and were willing to sacrifice themselves, it was very likely that the Lost Continent would be returned. That's because they can use the space-time orbit that we couldn't seal after we teleported, as well as the residual energy during the transition. As for whether he could really come back, I'm not sure either." Yinbing nodded and said, I understand. If the lost continent really returns, then will you still be their enemy? Amaterasu said, not necessarily. Back then, after sending the lost continent away, the energy consumption of the five of us was extremely large. We slept for a total of 3,000 years before recovering our original strength. And in these years, Cao and I have cultivated a special ability that allows us to detect all the energy remnants left behind by prehistoric times, as long as the lost continent doesn't have anything that we fear. We can't be bothered to care so much. Although we true gods are so powerful that we are no longer under the control of the time, when we were created, in our subconscious, we have always wanted to destroy our enemies. Only the god of destruction, the god of time, and the god of order can be our enemies. Therefore, the battle between the five of us is something that we value. All this time, when Cao and I joined forces, we were barely able to fight to a draw with those three guys. However, they outnumbered us after all. Their continuous improvement in cultivation has gradually surpassed us. From the last few thousand years of fighting, we are gradually no longer their match. If one day, the three of them can completely destroy us, then everything between us will be over. Perhaps they won't stay in the godly mainland anymore, and will instead go and explore a new world. Yin Bing, right? Are you willing to help us? If you're willing to help me and Cao, maybe we'll have a chance to turn defeat into victory. Me? Yin Bing looked at Amaterasu in shock. I'm just an ordinary human. I haven't even reached the level of God, descending master. How can I help you? Don't tell me you want me to be cannon fodder. Amaterasu chuckled. Don't belittle yourself too much. Yes, your ability isn't high enough, but the speed of your improvement is too shocking. It hasn't been long since you came to the godly mainland, but your spiritual power has already reached a terrifying level. When you attacked me with all your strength, it actually caused a tremor in my spiritual power. Other than those few true gods, I've never encountered such a thing. Your spiritual power is very special. If you work hard to cultivate, your future will be limitless. No one can predict how strong you'll be. Cao and I have reached our current level, and it's very difficult for us to improve further. However, your Heaven's Eye acupoint has been completely opened, and you've reached the ultimate level. With our help, we can quickly cultivate you into an expert. Even if you can't compete with us, you can at least play a role in restraining us. Helping us will be very beneficial. Looking at Amaterasu's tempting appearance, Yin Bing couldn't help but be moved. How he wished he could have powerful strength. If he had the help of Amaterasu and the god of life, then when he returned to the Yangon continent, the ice goddess priests would no longer be a match for him. Rescuing his parents would become a very easy matter. Although he was moved, Yin Bing didn't show it on his face. He calmly asked, if you and Cao defeated the three true gods, what would you do? Enslave the whole world? Amaterasu squeezed Yin Bing's hand and chuckled. You really know how to fantasize. With our ability, if we wanted to enslave the world, we would have done it long ago. However, what's the point of this to us? After living for tens of thousands of years, we've seen many things. Although Cao and I often have differences because of our different personalities, we have a very clear understanding of our future. If we complete the task in our subconscious, then what we want to do is to live the life of an ordinary person. Like an ordinary woman, marry a husband, and live like an ordinary person every day. This is the most beneficial for us. How about it? Help us. If you can help us defeat those three guys, then Cao and I will marry you and be your wife. How about it? We'll have powerful strength. You can also have us as your wives. This benefit is not bad. You know, our bodies have the best female genes. In this world, there can't be any more outstanding women than us. Yin Bing was stunned for a moment. Then, he firmly shook his head and said, I don't accept this benefit. I already have a woman I love. There's no room for anyone else in my heart. Amaterasu looked at Yin Bing in surprise. You can't be? Could it be that the woman you like is more beautiful than me? No, that's impossible. There was a trace of disappointment in her eyes. Yin Bing smiled and said, They may not be as beautiful as you, but we really love each other. Perhaps The first thing you and Cao should feel is love. Love is not something that can be produced with just words. Love needs to be cultivated, and it needs the integration of hearts. Now, I'm afraid we can't even be considered friends. Although men will have sexual relations with women because of desire, with you being so beautiful, it's impossible to say that I have no desire for you. But I have no love for you. I love my women, so this benefit of yours is not very attractive to me. Amaterasu smiled. I thought you were so faithful. It turns out that you also have several wives. Didn't you also say that love needs to be cultivated? I don't believe that you won't fall in love with me after being with me for a long time. Okay, don't talk nonsense. Are you willing to help us or not? Nian Bing certainly understood that while gaining powerful strength, he would also put himself in danger. Going against 3 true gods. Such an enemy was not something the ice goddess priestess could compare to. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded and said, Okay, I'm willing to help you because I need powerful strength. At the same time, I also want to see what you and Cao look like when you are ordinary people. Amaterasu's body trembled slightly, and the aura of death fluctuated unstably, but soon returned to normal. He smiled and said, You see, Cao has an opinion. You have to be careful. You kissed her. She's very old-fashioned. Even if you help us, I'm afraid she will make things difficult for you. After all, if you want to restore your vitality, you need both of us to work together. Recalling Cao's cold expression and disdainful look when he looked at himself, Nian Bing couldn't help but smile. Even if she does something to me, I can only endure it. Who told me to snatch your first kiss? The fusion of souls left a deep impression in Nian Bing's heart. He would never forget that wonderful feeling for the rest of his life. Amaterasu stood up, walked to the plant, and said, Do you know what this Tianxiang fruit tree is used for? Nian Bing followed behind her to the plant. At this time, he had the time to carefully observe the key item of the mission given to him by Cao. In this world filled with the aura of death, that plant was actually full of vitality. Its green branches and leaves were about 3 feet tall, and each leaf was bright and glistening. It held 5 white, jade-like sparkling fruits, exuding a gentle aura. Glancing at Amaterasu, whose height was not much similar to his own, Nian Bing said, Could it be that you planted this tree to cultivate a helper who can help you deal with those 3 true gods? Amaterasu smiled and said, It seems that our choice was correct. You are a smart person, and it is really easy to talk to you. That's right, this Tianxiang fruit tree has been cultivated for tens of thousands of years and has undergone the baptism of life and death. It is prepared for you. What do you think these 3 fruits will do? Nian Bing thought for a while, then shook his head and said, I can't guess. However, I feel that these 3 fruits won't necessarily give me great strength. It is more likely that they will transform my body. Amaterasu glanced at Nian Bing, and that charming look of hers made Ling Nian Bing's soul tremble. After all, she was really too beautiful. You can say that. You guessed right. This fruit tree has not only been cultivated in our respective domains, but also used our own strength to send it into the sky to absorb the chi of heaven, and into the depths of the sea to absorb the essence of the earth. Only then do we cultivate these 3 fruits. Eating them will not directly increase your strength, but it will give you the ability to exist with heaven and earth. In other words, if you eat them, you will become Xiantian Qi, and it will be the purest Xiantian Qi. Perhaps your understanding of Xiantian Qi is not deep enough. True Xiantian Qi can be transformed into any form of energy according to the will of the user. And what controls it is your spiritual power. So, when we found that you have enough spiritual power, we decided to let you be the one to help us. From now on, you will need to go through a transformation process. When you become a Xiantian spiritual body with our help, you can leave here and go back to your own world to cultivate. When we need you, we will naturally contact you. Nian Bing wanted to say something, but Amaterasu finally moved. Her aura had completely merged with the surroundings, as if the death waterfall had become a part of her body. All the death chi crazily rushed towards her, and that surging death qi filled the entire cave. Tianxiang moved. She looked at Nianbing with a gentle gaze, as if a young girl was looking at her lover. However, in the next moment, her slender hand had already pressed against Nianbing's chest. Nianbing only felt that his body had completely stopped moving. Then, an indescribably huge death qi crazily rushed into his body. Tianxiang's voice sounded in his heart. Guard your mind. No matter what, you must keep your mind clear. Only then can your spiritual power completely merge with the Xiantian qi. I'm going to start. With a wave of her left hand, a Tianxiang fruit floated away from its branches and leaves. It turned into a condensed white light in the air and drilled into Nianbing's mouth. The cool aura had no taste. In the blink of an eye, it had already spread to every part of Nianbing's body. His body, which could not withstand the huge death qi, suddenly became strong under the effect of this cool aura. He constantly absorbed and spat out this terrifying energy. Amaterasu stretched out her hand and knocked on the dark green scales on Nianbing's body. She smiled and said, "Quite strong. However, they will disappear soon. You were so arrogant before. Now, just take it that I'm using my position to avenge a private grudge. You have to bear with it." As soon as the last word was said, Amaterasu suddenly moved. Her body turned into a black shadow and rotated slightly around Nianbing. Her 10 fingers moved nimbly like 10 living snakes, bringing about a gentle rhythm, constantly moving in front of Nianbing. Every time she moved, her 10 fingers would gently tap on his body. The seemingly light touch gave Nianbing a completely different feeling. It was not pain, but a crisp sound, the sound of scales breaking. Nianbing's zombie body could not feel pain. However, every time Tianxiang tapped, a bone-penetrating force would seep into his body. Not only did it destroy the outer scales, but also destroyed the muscles, meridians, and bones in his body. What kind of feeling was it to hear one's own bones breaking? Perhaps only people who had really heard it would know. Even if it was not painful, it was a huge mental pressure. Nianbing's body gradually softened. With the shattering of his bones and meridians, the only thing that supported him was the surging death aura. The cool airflow completely integrated into Nianbing's body. He closed his eyes and resisted the discomfort of his heartbeat. Everything was shrouded in the death aura. Tianxiang's body twisted strangely in the air and strangely integrated into Nianbing's body. His spiritual power shook violently, and countless airflows rushed crazily from all directions to Nianbing's brain. With a flash of light, Nianbing found that the scales on his body had completely disappeared. He was floating naked above the center of the lake of death. This lake of death seemed to be boiling. The lake water kept rolling over and over. Layers of the strongest death aura turned into cone-shaped gray light and kept pouring into Nianbing's body. Everything was constantly changing. Tianxiang floated about 10 feet away from Nianbing and looked at him. She occasionally moved slightly, directing the death aura to gather around Nianbing. Time passed by minute, except for the Tianyin acupoint, which was protected by the spiritual power. Nianbing's body had been transformed from a zombie into a real dead spirit. Even the shadow puppet and the demon-devouring blade had been integrated into his body under the control of Tianxiang. After the process of destruction and reconstruction, the strong impact of the death aura actually consumed more than 80% of Nianbing's spiritual power. But he, who was used to enduring the pain, still persisted. A slight tingling pain came from his body. Nianbing was surprised to find that the feeling that he had been pushing for many days had returned, although there was still no breath of life. But he already had the feeling of a human again. The gray meridians clearly appeared, and a surge of aura kept flowing into every part of his body from the Li Zhong acupoint in his chest. That was the familiar innate qi. However, the Xiantian qi seemed to have completely fused with the aura of death. There was no rejection between the two as they continued to flow through Nianbing's body. Meanwhile, the aura of death in the outside world had turned into Xiantian qi and continued to seep into Nianbing's body. The innate chi was not under Nianbing's control. Instead, it kept merging with his body. The demon-devouring blade floated out of Nianbing's body and suspended in front of him with a black aura. Nianbing clearly saw a black energy ball gradually condensing in his chest. That familiar aura wasn't a dark magic. He was ecstatic. Not only did he have the feeling, but he also had magic again. How wonderful! Unfortunately, this was the waterfall of death, and below was the lake of death. He didn't have any other types of magical elements, so what he recovered was only dark magic. Okay, you can relax now. Next is the time to continue the transformation. Go to sleep, and when you wake up, everything will be better. Tianxiang's gentle voice sounded in Nianbing's mind. The innate qi that was wildly surging in his body suddenly became gentle. His spirit gradually relaxed, and tiredness swept over his brain. Nianbing only felt that his surroundings had become illusory. His body had already entered a moist world, and under the drowsiness, he gradually lost consciousness. The last thing he felt was that the magician had already sunk into the lake of death. Looking at the gradually sinking Nianbing in the lake, Amaterasu couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. He said to himself, "This silly boy, his willpower isn't very strong. So a kiss between people actually has such a wonderful feeling. I really want to let him kiss me like that again." Tianxiang's pretty face was slightly red, making her look a little livelier. The god of life, Call, wasn't the only one who was stimulated by that kiss. She was as well. Moreover, the stimulation she received was no less than Cao's. Otherwise, she wouldn't have revealed all the secrets in her heart. Tianxiang, who had always longed to live an ordinary life, looked forward to it even more because of her contact with Nianbing. A large part of the reason why the gods were not allowed to set foot on the continent of Yangon was for the sake of their future. Although the god of destruction, the god of time, and the god of order thought differently from them, they didn't want to offend the god of emotions too much before the outcome was decided. Therefore, the peace of the continent of Yangon was preserved all these years. Tianxiang lightly floated to the spot directly above Nianbing's sinking body. Her arms slowly opened to both sides of her body. The water level of the lake of death continued to rise, and the waterfall of death stopped flowing. The water of the lake of death gradually formed a huge water ball. Tianxiang's figure flashed and entered the center of the water ball. She hugged the unconscious Nianbing with a layer of black air, completely entangling the two people's bodies together, allowing the huge circles of death aura to constantly invade them. The gray light experienced a gradual transition from gray to black. Yangon Continent, cold mountain range. For lights constantly changed shape in the air. It was impossible to see their movements with the naked eye. One could only see 2 red and 2 blue lights constantly flashing in the air and touching each other. The magic elements in the air fluctuated violently. The aura of ice and fire permeated the uninhabited cold mountain range. The 4 lights condensed in the air and didn't disperse. Every time they attacked or defended, they would bring about a strong light. Although the condensed magic power didn't destroy everything in the surroundings, it could be seen from the distortions in the air how powerful these energies were. The 4 lights, 2 red and 2 blue, were particularly eye-catching. From the strength and size of the lights, one of the red lights was obviously more rusty and much weaker than the other 3 lights. Especially in terms of control, it was obviously not as precise as the other 3 lights. Among the other 3 lights, one of the blue lights was slightly weaker, but its control was extremely exquisite. It could often avoid the elites of the other lights and attack from tricky positions, resulting in unexpected results. I'm not fighting anymore. It's really unfair. The red lights converged. The weakest red light flew out of the battle circle and appeared at the side. She pouted and had a dissatisfied expression. It was the charming and impulsive Shuejing. Seeing that she stopped, the other 3 lights also dissipated. They revealed their original forms. The 2 strongest lights were naturally the sisters Feng Nu and Lan Chun. The slightly weaker blue light was Long Ling. Shuejing looked at the three girls and said with grievance, "It's too unfair. You have the heavens I point, so controlling energy is as easy as taking something out of your pocket. I can't do it. It wasn't easy for that guy Garamandes to help me reach the level of swordsman, but I'm still so much weaker than you. It's not fun. I also want to open the heavens I point." Long Ling was supported by a ball of condensed snow under her feet and came in front of Shuejing. "Silence. Don't throw a tantrum. Didn't Brother Garamandes say that the heavens I point is the most difficult to open among the human apertures? You must do it step by step. Be careful not to go crazy." Shuejing looked at Long Ling's concerned expression and couldn't help but laugh. She said, "All right, you think I'm really angry? Although I'm much weaker than you, I'm the one who has improved the fastest during this time. I'm really jealous of you. Nian Bing, that guy actually used his life force to help you open your apertures. I really don't know what he's thinking." As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she felt that it was a little inappropriate. When she said the last sentence, her voice was obviously lowered. However, with the abilities of the Dragon Spirit, the Phoenix Maiden, and Lan Chun, how could they not hear it? Long Ling's face became gloomy. "If Nian Bing can stay by our side, I'd rather not have this heavens I point. He has already left for half a year, but there's no news at all." Shuejing said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Ling, it's all my fault. Don't worry. How could Nian Bing be willing to leave you? He will definitely come back alive. He used up so much energy. Healing also needs time. Hurry up. I believe that it won't be long before you see him." Feng Nu walked to Long Ling's side and hugged her shoulder like a big sister. She smiled and said, "Silence is right. Nian Bing will definitely come back. All right, let's continue to cultivate. Linger, don't forget our goal." Long Ling raised her head, her eyes filled with determination. She nodded twice. "I won't forget. I will never forget. All right, let's continue." She chanted a few words in a low voice, and the blue light suddenly became stronger. A silver line lit up between her eyebrows, and under the effect of the blizzard, she flew into the sky again. Half a year passed, and the girls continued to cultivate under the guidance of the Dragon King, the most hardworking magician Long Ling. Although she looked weak, she was very determined. She knew that her strength was much weaker than Feng Nu and Lan Shan, so she worked even harder. In just half a year, with the nourishment of the angel's tear, the opening of the heavens I point, and her own efforts, she now had the strength of an archmagus. She even opened her own innate domain, and her strength had increased greatly. Although she still couldn't compare to the Feng Nu sisters, the gap between them had shortened a lot. Feng Nu's progress was the most stable. She was originally the strongest among the girls. Opening the heavens I point was equivalent to opening a door to cultivation. In half a year, she had already cultivated the Phoenix 9 transformations to the early stage of the 5th transformation. Her speed was so fast that even she found it hard to believe. And although Lan Shun didn't cultivate martial arts, under the guidance of Feng Nu, she combined the Feng people's secret techniques with her own Ice Phoenix body. Adding a new path, she fused it with ice magic, causing her Ice Goddess domain to undergo earth-shaking changes. And the strength of her ice magic also greatly increased because of the transformation of her body in the land of angels. Among the three girls, she was the only one who had sex with Nian Bing. Nian Bing obtained Lan Shen's Ice Phoenix body and obtained great benefits in terms of magic cultivation. Unfortunately, she directly used the life curse magic and turned into a zombie before she had time to discover these benefits. But Lan Shen was different. She obtained Nian Bing's virginity, which was also a great benefit to her. These days, she cultivated diligently, and her overall strength was already on par with Feng Nu. If the two girls joined hands, any Dragon King would already be no match for them under the circumstances where the Dragon King didn't use the ultimate dragon language magic. Seeing the three girls continue to cultivate diligently, Shuejing muttered to herself, "They are really crazy. Every day, apart from meditation, they don't give themselves any time to rest. It seems that I should give the title of crazy woman to them." Humph, Garamandes, that smelly guy, he didn't think of a way to help me open my acupoints. Let's go settle accounts with him. She didn't want to admit it, but since she hadn't seen that fire dragon after breakfast, she actually somewhat missed it. The combat in the air still continued until Long Ling consumed all of her magical power. Feng Nu and Long Ling sat together. While absorbing the Xiantian Qi in the air, they discussed with each other the various aspects of experience they obtained in today's combat, as well as their own understanding. With the three women cultivating together, it was much easier for them to improve compared to cultivating alone. Sister, when are we going to act? I feel that our current strength should be about there. If we can sneak into the Ice God Tower, it is very likely that we can rescue Uncle and Annie. After leaving the Ice God Tower, Lan Shun had already changed the way he addressed Nian Bing's parents because of Nian Bing. Feng Nu shook her head and said, Chun Shun, we can't be anxious. It is necessary to ask for help, but we need to work harder to improve our strength. The Ice Goddess Priestess has been a God-sent master for many years. According to Big Brother Garamandes, she has opened 3 more acupoints. Even if the 3 of us join hands, we can't possibly be her match. What's more, we still have to safely take Uncle and Annie out of there. Therefore, we need to have greater assurance. Let's wait for another half a year. If we cultivate diligently for another half a year, our strength should continue to rise to another level. At that time, if Nian Bing still hasn't returned, we will act. Long Ling lowered her head and said with a choked voice, Sister Feng, if Nian Bing really can't come back, then we... Chapter 176. Feng Nu smiled faintly and said, Ling, I believe in Nian Bing. For us, for his parents, he will definitely come back. Even if he doesn't come back, will our hearts still change? If that day really comes, we will help Nian Bing fulfill all his unfulfilled wishes. Then we will bring Uncle and Annie to find a place to live in seclusion and wait for him. We will wait for him forever. Among them, no one would try to persuade them not to wait any longer. They all understood that no matter who it was, they would never be able to give up this unforgettable relationship. Among the 3 girls, the one who had the least relationship with Nian Bing should be Long Ling. She had almost never really been together with Nian Bing. However, when Nian Bing released his spiritual energy, he didn't forget about her. He used the last of his energy to send her a long-distance transmission. That drop of angel's tear had made her deeply confirm the feelings that Nian Bing had for her. That was enough. At the peak of the Green Mountain, there was a huge cone-shaped hole that was upside down. It was like the shape of a volcano. Everything around it looked so quiet. Unlike the green of the mountain, in this cone-shaped hole that was hundreds of feet deep, everything around it was gray. Even the sky above the mountain was no exception. Silently, above the cone-shaped hole, a figure was floating. Circles of death ripples continuously spread out from that figure. The rhythm of those faint gray lights was steady and gentle. It seemed that the energy waves in the air were so harmonious. This was almost a miracle in the godly mainland. If there was someone who could use their spiritual energy to check the energy elements in the air, they would clearly see that after the death aura became invisible, it would return in a short while. Every dark element filled with death would absorb one element of ice, fire, earth, wind, space, and light, and then merge with that upright figure in the center. Not a single dark element returned empty-handed, with the Green Mountain as the center. Because of the excessive loss of magic elements, even if the outside world was baptized by magic storms, this place had always been peaceful. And all of this was because of that tall figure in the air. The release of the death ripples finally stopped. 2 hours later, a change finally appeared on the figure in the sky. A pair of black eyes slowly opened. It was a pair of eyes that couldn't be any more ordinary. There was only calmness in them. There was not a single trace of energy fluctuation. His pair of black eyes gradually deepened. She actually gave all of this to me. It seems that I have really been reborn. Although it's not complete, it's a good start. With a faint smile on her face, Nian Bing said to herself. Looking at the dark clouds in the sky, his skin, which had become white again, had a faint layer of gray. After a flash of gray, everything returned to normal. Raising his hand, He gently stroked a light gray mark between his eyebrows. The smile on his face deepened. So, the real domain is here. He raised his left hand, and a black light floated out of his body, floating in front of him in silence. The narrow and slender blade exuded a layer of dark red lines. The originally black gem on the hilt had turned dark red, and the bloodthirsty aura was full of dominance. A black lightning floated out of the hilt. The blade was still floating there. In front of Nian Bing, there was a Nian Bing covered in black clothes. He looked at the naked Nian Bing, nodded, and said, "You finally know. I should know too." Nian Bing smiled. His eyes were very friendly. "Yes, you should know too. However, I really didn't expect that the person I chose to inherit the Demon Devourer would be so powerful. No, it should be said that he became so powerful so quickly. Only someone like you, who has the real darkness, is worthy of this Demon Devourer blade, isn't it?" Nian Bing smiled. "There's one thing you're wrong about. I'm not a person who has the real darkness. What I have is the true secret of death. Death and darkness are not the same concepts. Don't forget my identity. I'm just a magician, no, a magic chef. Can you tell me what happened? I want to know about you, Emperor Kurobutsu." Yes, Nian Bing's shadow puppet was Emperor Kurobutsu. When Nian Bing entered the real dark domain, she fully understood this point. Emperor Kurobutsu's expression was very calm. "Of course. Now, not only are you the owner of the Demon Devourer blade, but you can also be said to be my master. Back then, among the 7 of us, I was the only exception because I wasn't a practitioner on the Yangon continent. This is the place where I once lived. It's because I came from his continent that I know the value of power. I understand that power is everything. The Yangon continent doesn't have as bad weather as the godly continent. So if I want to become stronger, I have to constantly challenge the strong. Only in this way can I become stronger. Only in this way can I return to this continent with my chest held high." Ice looked at him with some surprise. "So, you should be one of the gods here." Emperor Kurobutsu nodded. "Yes. When I left here, I was already close to the demigod realm. But later on, I chose a different path, so I was expelled. The so-called gods are all sanctimonious guys. On the surface, they don't accept the dark domain, but what about the dark domain? Could it be that their despicable methods are stronger than mine? A person who cultivates darkness? In order to fight back, I exile myself. When I came to the Yangon continent, I met those 6 people. You know the 6 people. Among the 7 of us, I was the strongest. Although later on, the gods were afraid that I would tell others about the godly continent, so they launched a divine punishment. But could they really kill me? Even Safin could find a way to escape, let alone me. At that time, I wasn't just a Dark Domain Divine Master. Even the Dark Dragon King was defeated by me. My Dark Domain had reached the 13th level, and I had opened 3 apertures. One was the ultimate stage, and the other 2 were the middle stage. Even facing the most powerful divine punishment, I didn't die. Give up your physical body, using your soul as a blade, am I right? Nian Bing suddenly interrupted. Emperor Kurobutsu nodded. Yes, that's right. The demon-devouring blade was originally a divine tool, but because of my soul, it changed. It changed and surpassed the divine tool. The moment you used your own blood to awaken my soul, this devil-devouring blade had already undergone a fundamental change. Furthermore, after your innate darkness aura, although my body was in the form of energy, it also allowed me to regain my physical body. But for me, it was enough. Safin chose to abandon his physical body for the sake of his life, but I chose to abandon my physical body in order to become stronger. Even if I can only use the blade as my main body and energy as the carrier of my soul, I will still be the strongest blade. His domineering words were filled with a desire for strength, a choice that bordered on madness. But Nian Bing, who had experienced this deeply, understood Emperor Kurobutsu's desire for victory. Looking at Emperor Kurobutsu, who looked the same as him but had a completely different temperament, and then looking at the demon-devouring blade with its dark red patterns flickering continuously, Nian Bing said, "Okay, I understand. What you pursued was the peak of strength. Now, you and the demon-devouring blade have become one, and become a super divine tool. From now on, we are friends and partners. Partners? Although I helped you, you have to understand that I was also helping myself at the same time. Only by absorbing a large amount of dark domain and death domain could I separate my soul from my body. That was why I was able to separate my spiritual body from the blade. Not only did it revive my soul, but it also allowed me to gradually recover my strength. Moreover, I was already awake, but I didn't tell you. Don't tell me you don't have any doubts? Nian Bing smiled. Should I have any doubts? That was in the past. In a certain sense, you and I have both been reborn. Let bygones be bygones. Xingji takes back what I said. We are brothers. Right now, I just want to know how much of your strength you have recovered. Emperor Kurobutsu smiled indifferently and said, What a good sentence. Let bygones be bygones. That's right. Perhaps I really should be reborn with you. My strength has already recovered to its previous state after being baptized by the death domain here. Although the Dark Dragon King has been constantly improving these years, I still have some confidence that I can fight him to a draw. When you need me, I will be your help. At the same time, I will also use you as a foundation to absorb the Dark Domain and Death Domain. Your matter here is already done. Before that woman left, she also helped me absorb the other 3 Dark Domain magical beasts that were originally guarding the Green Mountain into this demon-devouring blade. She also told me to tell you to return to the starting point when you came. With a flash of black light, Emperor Kurobutsu floated into the blade. The demon-devouring blade flipped in the air and fell into Nian Bing's hands. Nian Bing stretched his body as he held onto the demon-devouring blade. A comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. There was still no sign of life. He had even turned from darkness to complete death. However, he could feel reality now. He felt like an ordinary person. His skin was no longer as stiff as before. Instead, it was full of elasticity. Other than the fact that his skin was slightly paler, he was no different from an ordinary person on the surface. More importantly, the current Nian Bing had found what he needed the most, and that was magic. His figure flashed, and he floated to the edge of the Green Mountain. He took a deep look at the spring of the Death God waterfall, where the water of death no longer flowed. A breeze blew, and Nian Bing's body floated down into the distance. Nian Bing was very clear about how long he had stayed here. That was half a year. In half a year, on the surface, he had 3 gains. The first was that he had found the feeling of being human again. The second was that he had regained his magic. And the third was that he had completely understood the meaning of death. But it was only these 3 gains. His strength did not improve as expected, and everything was still in the original realm. It was just that unknowingly, Nian Bing felt that he had changed a little. Those were the changes that came from his body. Unfortunately, he could only feel part of the meaning of these changes. Perhaps he could only understand all the changes when he returned to the starting point. As he flew forward, Nian Bing's heart pounded. He knew that if he returned to the starting point, he wouldn't be facing Dark Heaven's will. Instead, he would be facing the God of Life, who had lost control of her body because of his passionate kiss. Would she let him go and easily help him recover his life? It would be very difficult. Forget it. Since the Dark Domain and Cow had chosen him, then she would not really make things difficult for him. They still needed his help to defeat those 3 so-called true gods. He should go and see Halogen and those dwarven seniors first, and also take back his 6 divine blades. Thinking of this, Nian Bing's flying body suddenly accelerated, and he flew in the direction he came from. Not long after he flew, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly changed. In the friction between the clouds, the sky suddenly lit up. Then, Nian Bing suddenly felt an unprecedented, huge pressure coming from the sky. In the rumbling sound, although his Tian Yin acupoint felt the change in the sky, how could a person's speed be faster than lightning? I can't be so unlucky, right? This was the only thought Nian Bing had before he landed. Oh no, it should be said that he fell. A body emitting black smoke and carrying a burnt smell floated towards the ground. The moment it collided with the ground, a milky white light had already emerged from this body, reducing the impact of the landing. Boom! silently lying on the ground. Nian Bing now finally understood why he had almost never seen anyone fly since he came to this god's continent. It turned out that there was only one result of flying here, and that was to be intimate with the heavenly lightning. Perhaps only people at the level of Cao and Tianxiang would not be affected by the heavenly lightning. How it felt to be struck by lightning. Only by experiencing it could one understand. The feeling of numbness spread to every cell in the body, and the whole body was slightly trembling. The meridians and blood in the body also appeared to be stagnant for a moment. Nian Bing discovered that he was really resistant to beatings. Being struck by lightning like this did not seem to be a big deal, and the feeling of numbness gradually disappeared. Other than his body turning black and his pitiful long hair turning into ashes, there was not much difference, not to mention any injuries. No wonder Halogen said that he was abnormal. He was indeed abnormal. Could it be that the green-eyed serpent scales that Tianxiang smashed on his body did not disappear, but instead merged into his skin? The meridians and blood were all reborn in the aura of death. Now that he was struck by lightning, Nian Bing felt a lot more comfortable, and even his blood flow became a lot smoother. He did not need to control his magic at all, and the ice element turned into water element, cooperating with the light element to nourish his body. The other magic elements completely shrank together. Looking at these two magic elements dispelling the charred surface of Nian Bing's body, as well as the effects of the lightning. Being struck by lightning was actually so comfortable? Then would he die if he was struck a few more times? The answer was unknown. Nian Bing decided to walk as soon as his body recovered. He would take the lead and not fly until he found a way to resist the heavenly lightning. He believed that on the godly continent, there must be a way to avoid the heavenly lightning. Otherwise, why would Long Shenfei be fine when he was flying? Just as Nian Bing was waiting for his body to recover, he suddenly felt two streams of air quickly approaching his direction. It was not heard with his ears, nor was it seen with his eyes. It was a feeling that came from his Tian Yin acupoint. Nian Bing smiled faintly. His eyes glowed faintly as he carefully probed into the ground with his spiritual power. Then, he expanded his spiritual power at a speed that was not any slower than lightning's. It was very easy for him to capture those two auras. Those were the auras of humans. Nian Bing understood that this was the first time he had encountered a god after coming to the godly mainland. Jieshang, that guy who was struck by lightning, should be nearby. Let's look carefully. Do you feel his aura? A somewhat sharp voice sounded. Another, slightly lower voice said, No, I can only sense his position based on the changes of magic elements in the air. He should not be far away. Let's look carefully. We should be able to find him. Hopefully, that guy has some good stuff on him. It's been a long time since I've seen such a fool. After so many years, each of us gods is smarter than the last. We're getting more and more familiar with the environment of the continent. We brothers won't do things that we're not sure of. It's not easy to find targets these past few years. This time, we're lucky. Even if that guy doesn't have anything good on him, we can still eat a big meal. It's been a long time since we ate meat. The number of green lizards seems to have decreased. Most of them have been taken by the powerful gods. With our identities as demigods, we can't even eat our fill. If it wasn't for the order that forbade us from leaving the godly continent, I would have gone to the Yangon continent long ago. With our strength, even if we were called gods, we shouldn't be too far away. As far as I know, demigods like us are even stronger than some magisters and swordsmen there. There shouldn't be any more powerful experts in the Yangon continent. Hey, Nadu, do you think you're the only one who wants to go there? As long as you're a god, there's no one who doesn't want to go there. I just don't know what the main gods are thinking. They're still restricting us. Besides, the barrier around the continent isn't something we can break. Otherwise, I would have slipped away long ago. Why would I wait until now? Jieshang's low voice was filled with anger. Nadu snorted and said, It's not like we don't have a chance. I heard that the legendary Miorda's bottle of sealing was left in the Yangon continent and was guarded by the 7 Dragon Kings. Now that the 7 God-tier Dragon Kings have lost the bottle, the situation doesn't seem good. The main gods are discussing how to send people to look for the bottle, and how to recruit the experts in the Yangon continent so that they can return to the Lost Continent at any time. No one knows the situation in the Lost Continent. If the Lost Continent has been developing for tens of thousands of years, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble. Jie Shang said, even if they want to send people to the Yangon continent, they'll have to send God-tier experts. It won't be our turn. Nado laughed and said, if it's not our turn, can't we sneak over? If someone wants to go, then the seal will be opened. At that time, we could try to find an opportunity to sneak out. Once we get to the Yangon continent, we'll be able to live a life 100 times better than before. According to what I heard, there are many idiots in the Yangon continent who are working hard to cultivate and want to come to the godly continent. Ha! I wonder what they'll think when they get here. Hey, look who's fighting who? Don't look for them. Let's hide for a while. Jieshang's voice was full of surprise. Then, Nianbing clearly felt Nadu and Jieshang's auras become much weaker. They hid in a crack in a huge rock. While Jieshang was surprised, Nianbing felt two other auras. Compared to Nadu and Jieshang, these two auras were clearly much stronger. The two people's auras were constantly colliding, but they could clearly feel the huge waves of energy, but there was no sound. One of these two auras gave Nianbing a very familiar feeling. It was an indescribable feeling. It was as if there was a tacit understanding in their hearts. Closing his eyes, Nianbing called out his spiritual power, which had seeped into the ground, and instantly expanded its coverage. Immediately, his spiritual power was like his eyes, and he could clearly see everything that was happening in the direction of the energy waves. There were two auras, one white and one green. The white light was steady, and the green light was elegant. The two auras constantly collided from the ground to the air. Because he was using his spiritual power to investigate, Nianbing could clearly feel that the two auras were extremely dense when they collided with each other. Although the auras did not seem large, their explosive power was very strong. If compared to the cultivators in the Yangon continent, there was no one who could compare to them. Suddenly, he understood why he felt so familiar. That familiarity came from the white light, and he also recognized who the owner of the white light was. In the not-so-bright light, the two figures, one green and one white, were very clear. The white figure looked to be in his 40s and was over 2 meters tall. His shoulders were very wide, and the dense aura of light made him look holy. Although his appearance could not be said to be handsome, his face of righteousness was not fake. It was completely a feeling that came from the inside out. Ling Nianbing was very shocked. His strength was clearly below the green light, but every attack he made was filled with righteousness. He was actually able to fight the green light to a standstill. Nianbing suddenly realized that, at their level, moves did not seem to be important. The two were competing in speed, energy usage, and energy intensity. Neither side was suppressed by the other in terms of momentum. The middle-aged man in white was fighting a young man in green. The young man's figure was similar to Nianbing's. His short green hair made him look very spirited, but the light in his eyes was very cold. His attack speed was clearly a lot faster than the white-clothed man's. Every time he attacked, the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart. The reason why his attacks did not make any sound was because, with the attack as the center, the surrounding area had been torn to pieces, and even the sound had been isolated. Both his hands were like swords, continuously revolving around the white-clothed man in green light. Every time he attacked, he would dodge and retreat. However, every attack felt very real, forcing the white-clothed man to defend within a 1-meter radius around him. The milky white energy blade in his hand was condensed from light essence, and he was barely able to resist the attacks of the green-clothed man. Occasionally, he would launch a powerful attack to force the green-clothed man to retreat. Only then would he have the opportunity to take a breather. From the strength of their do-chi, it was very difficult to distinguish their strength. Although the green light was a lot stronger than the white light, wanting to break through the defense of the white light do-chi was not an easy thing to do. The battle was getting closer and closer, slowly moving in the direction of Nianbing. Their battle had already entered a state of anxiety. Good. Your divine aura is indeed special. However, I don't believe that you can block my eeless thrust. Be careful, take this. The green-clothed man's voice was unusually agitated, filled with ice-cold, killing intent. His body suddenly swayed in the air, and the light in his hands condensed into the shape of two long swords. The green light suddenly became more intense, and with a shake of his hands, hundreds of green rays floated out, abruptly heading towards the white-clothed man. The green rays advanced in the air, and everything around them was completely distorted, making it impossible to see the path of their attack. The white-clothed man was able to contend against the green-clothed man, and obviously had his own abilities. With a wave of the divine radiance blade in his hand, a milky white light screen appeared in front of him. Immediately, 3 more light screens appeared in succession, and before the green rays could reach them, the 4 milky white light screens quickly intersected, forming a shield of light. Chi-chi-chi-chi sounds rang out continuously. Every sound caused the air to split apart, and the various magic elements in the air became violently agitated, especially the wind elements, which were abnormally violent. Due to the influence of the wind elements in the surroundings of the charging green light, circles of green vortices appeared around the green light, and the strength of the wind spikes suddenly increased by a large margin. Come at me. The milky white blade in the white-clothed man's hand suddenly disappeared, and both of his hands pushed forward without hesitation, blocking the 4 intersecting walls of light. At this moment, his eyes suddenly turned golden, and a divine golden hexagram appeared behind him. The aura of the light element clearly became denser. All sounds disappeared when the 2 rays of light collided, and even the 2 people fighting stopped. However, in the next moment, their bodies flashed, and the white-clothed man's light shield disappeared, while the eeless thrust launched by the green-clothed man also disappeared in the light shield. Green and white rays of light rose in the air, and the white-clothed man and the green-clothed man had their backs to each other, as if everything was already over. Through the perception of her spiritual force, Nian Bing very quickly realized who had the upper hand in this battle. Although the white-clothed man was not weak, the green-clothed man's penetrating attack was really too tyrannical. Because of this, the white-clothed man's light shield was not completely blocked, and there were still several green rays of light attacking him. However, at that moment, everything happened too quickly, and Jie Shang and Yi Qingtang, who were hiding at the side, did not notice at all. You've lost. Hand over that thing. The green-clothed man coldly said. Lost? There's no such word in my dictionary. In my mind, there's only life and death. If you want something, unless you kill me, don't even think about taking anything away from me. The white-clothed man's voice was very steady, and at the same time very resolute, as if nothing could affect his determination. The green-clothed man slowly turned around, coldly looking at the white-clothed man. His eyes were already filled with insidiousness, and his murderous intent became even stronger. Don't think that just because a few main gods are good to you, you can be so arrogant in front of me. I can kill you all the same, without anyone knowing. Hand over that thing, and I'll spare your life. The white-clothed man also turned around. His face was very calm, as if he had not suffered any injuries. Then go ahead and do it. You should know my temper. What's the use of saying such nonsense? Chapter 177. The man in green's eyes flashed coldly. You really want me to kill you? You have to think this through. Everyone only has one life. The man in white laughed self-deprecatingly. People, didn't we call ourselves gods long ago? We're no longer human. You're wasting your breath on me. It's not like your usual style. Looks like you're still concerned about them, isn't that right? Since that's the case, I'll grant you your wish. Let's see who can threaten me. The wind in the air began to spin rapidly, and wind blades began to condense. After the originally flowing wind turned into sharp blades, they actually condensed behind the man in green without any intention of moving. It was as if they were puppets waiting for his orders. The man in white took a deep breath and said, Come, I'd like to see how strong a master god candidate like you is to be able to kill me. Haven't you seen enough? How strong do you think I am? The man in green's face suddenly calmed down. Masters of their level would not be affected by their emotions. Once a battle started, they would be fully immersed in it. The white light condensed in the man in white's hand. The white light gradually changed into a golden color, filled with a sacred golden color. The man in white held the golden long sword in his firm hand. His face became more serious. He took a deep breath, looked at the man in green in front of him, and slowly raised the blade of light in his hand. The man in green snorted. "You've already lost the purity of light. Even if you have the sacred power of light to increase your attack power, how can you block my Aeolus power? You've seen my Aeolus thrust. This time, I'll let you see my Aeolus slash." As he spoke, the dozens of green lights behind him suddenly merged. A huge, semicircular wind blade floated above his head. Soon, the wind blade actually returned to its original size, floating there in silence. But the green wind blade had now turned dark green. Nian Bing was very clear about the situation. This was a method of compression, but the man in white was compressing Do Chi, not magic. The green Do Chi kept rising. The man in green raised his hand and pinched the inside of the wind blade. "I'll give you one last chance." The white-robed man used his actions to answer the green-robed man. The golden blade in his hand was already raised high above his head. With a shout, a phantom of golden light floated out and slashed toward the azure-robed man. The green-robed man snorted coldly and moved his finger. The dark green wind blade had already flown out, and there was no suspense. That illusory golden light was immediately torn into pieces by the solid wind blade and flew towards the white-robed man without changing its original momentum. The white-robed man suddenly smiled, and the golden blade in his hand turned into specks of golden light that drifted away. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and those specks of golden light actually turned golden red under the effect of the blood. Suddenly, they scattered in all directions, dodging the attack of the dark green wind blade. Then, they contracted again, and like 100 birds returning to their nest, they rushed towards the blue-robed man. Blood-devouring technique. Impossible, how could you? He didn't have time to be surprised. Facing the countless golden red lights, his body immediately spun quickly, turning into a tornado. He fused with those golden red lights, but this fusion was accompanied by an explosive sound. The white-robed man let out a loud laugh. Seeing that the dark green wind blade was already in front of him, he suddenly shouted angrily, and his right fist fiercely swung forward. With an indomitable momentum, he hit the center of the wind blade. Violent roars sounded from both sides at the same time. The light and wind magic elements in the air fluctuated violently. The energy of combat aura filled the air, and deep marks appeared on the ground one after another. The battle between them seemed to have torn everything apart, of course, including themselves. As the light faded away, the cyan-clothed man barely managed to hover about 10 feet above the ground, gasping for breath. His cyan-clothed clothes had already been dyed red by his own blood, and there were at least 7 bloody holes on his shoulders, legs, and body. Each bloody hole didn't look big, but they were all penetrating wounds. Although the wounds had been sealed by him with a special method, there was still blood flowing out. His originally cold face looked abnormally pale, and the wind element Do Chi around his body fluctuated unstably. It was obviously much weaker than before. The white-robed man's situation was worse than the blue-robed man. From his forehead to his crotch, there was a deep cut of blood. The arm he used to block the dark green wind blade had already disappeared, and his badly mutilated shoulder was covered with pieces of flesh. His body was densely covered with countless small wounds, and he had already become a bloody man. The only thing that didn't change was his eyes. That resolute look didn't have any intention of yielding, and instead, his fighting spirit was even more powerful. Good. You actually didn't hesitate to use your own Genuine to deal with me. It seems that I still underestimated you. The blue-robed man gasped for breath and looked at the white-robed man with resentment. The white-robed man said indifferently, "What's the use of Genuine? Do you think I'll have any Genuine left after being killed by you? However, I really do admire your strength. I admit that you do indeed have the strength of a master god candidate. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to avoid being hit in your vitals when I used my own Jin Yuan as the price. The blue-robed man said, Originally, I never wanted to kill you from the beginning. You forced me to do all this. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. You call yourself the sacred teacher, but can that really save you? The light element has no effect on your injuries. With your current injuries, even if they can be healed, you won't be able to recover your original strength. The white-robed man smiled. Although his blood-covered face looked a little terrifying when he smiled, his aura was still as strong as before, or even stronger. What are you afraid? You're afraid that those masters will take revenge on you. Indeed, I'm afraid of getting into trouble. At this point, the blue-robed man seemed to no longer care about his face. Because I'm afraid of getting into unnecessary trouble, I only want that thing in your hand. On the godly continent, there's nothing more important than survival. Even you and I, who have already reached the godly realm, are no exception. In order to survive, what's a little fear? It seems that your nickname of Stinky Rock is not wrong at all. I'm afraid you'll really have to take that stubborn temper of yours to the grave. Yes, my temper is stinky. As long as it's something I've decided on, there's no reason for me to change my mind. I know you still have the strength to do it. Do it. Kill me. Perhaps you can find that thing in my body. The white-robed man's voice was emotionless, as if he wasn't talking about his own life. Are you really not afraid of death? The blue-robed man said hatefully. The wounds on his body were quickly healing, but the large amount of blood loss and energy consumption couldn't be replenished in a short time. Death? What's the difference between death and life? On the godly continent, what's the point of life? I've been here for more than a day or two, but what have I seen? What have you seen? I don't think you've forgotten. On this continent, whether it's you, who calls yourself Aeolus, or me, who's called the God of Light, we're all just people who work hard to survive. What God? Aren't the so-called God still human? If God really lived as cowardly as us, I'm afraid he would also end his own life. To me, it's better to die than to live in this joyless world full of death. The blue-robed man sighed and said, So you've already gotten over it. Unfortunately, I haven't. So I must have that thing. A faint blue light gradually condensed around his body, turning into small wind blades. They gradually appeared in the air between the two of them. The white-robed man also wanted to mobilize his Do-Chi. Unfortunately, his injuries were too severe, and he couldn't condense his Do-Chi into form. He could only emit a layer of milky white light around his body. He looked at the blue-robed man in front of him unyieldingly. Okay, it's time to end it. What's there to fight? A sharp voice sounded. The blue-robed man who was ready to fight changed his expression. On the godly continent, all the gods were very selfish. Sometimes, in order to survive, they would even eat their own kind to replenish themselves. So, among the gods, the most feared thing was to meet other gods when they were weak. Because no one would do anything. Even if it was a good friend, it could become a fatal problem. Although the environment on the godly continent was very bad, there were many special minerals on this continent. These minerals were made into life-saving items by the gods in various ways. They were all very precious. The stronger the god, the more of these items they would have. Unfortunately, the protective equipment and weapons on the blue-robed man and the white-robed man had already been used in the previous battle. Otherwise, the two of them wouldn't have reached the end of the battle. How could the blue-robed man not be surprised when he suddenly encountered an outsider? Nadu and Jieshong walked out from the shadows. Actually, with their strength, they wouldn't have been able to hide from the two of them who were fighting each other. It was only because the two of them had already used up a lot of their strength when fighting here, and because they were at the critical moment of the battle, that they were careless and didn't sense their presence. After all, this place wasn't far from the forbidden area, Death Waterfall. Usually, very few gods would come here, so the two of them didn't pay too much attention to it. The joy on Nadu and Jieshang's faces couldn't be concealed. The intense joy on their faces made Nian Bing, who had just recovered from the lightning strike, feel disgusted. Nadu and Jieshang walked towards the blue-robed man and the white-robed man respectively. Both of their bodies emitted a faint red light. Fire dough, chi surrounded their bodies, constantly fluctuating, as if they could launch an attack at any time. The blue-robed man said coldly, "Who are you? How dare you interfere in my business? Do you know who I am?" Nadu smiled slyly and said, "Who are you? We don't know, and we don't want to know. Don't worry, we won't ask you to take out anything to redeem your life. We'll just kill you directly, and the rest of your things will be ours. With your strength, you should have a lot of good things on you. Moreover, eating your flesh might be a great supplement, hee hee." The blue-robed man's eyes were even colder. Those wind blades that were originally prepared to deal with the white-robed man slowly retracted to his side. "Well, I didn't expect that I would be betrayed by you. Then come, let's see who will die first." The light in Nadu's eyes became even more greedy. "If it were normal times, I would definitely not be your opponent. As a demigod, there's a big gap between us and gods like you. In your eyes, we are even less than ants. However, with your current situation, what can you do? Although my strength is not strong, with just a few wind blades of yours, it seems impossible to deal with a demigod like me." As he spoke, his body suddenly rushed forward. Relying on his extremely fast speed, he transformed into 3 shadows in the air. 3 streaks of red light shot out from the 3 shadows. The red light condensed into one in the air and suddenly attacked the blue-robed man. Nadu was very smart. He knew that against a spent arrow like the blue-robed man, using pure strength was the most effective method. After all, the blue-robed man did not have much dochi left. However, the blue-robed man still had his battle experience. If he continued to fight, once the blue-robed man found a way to recover his strength, it would not be good. Therefore, he used all of his strength. The dough chi in the air brought out a sharp sound. The scorching hot dough chi caused the air to burn as it went straight for the blue-robed man's chest. The white-robed man did not say anything. Jieshong, who was walking towards him, also did not say anything. However, his movements were not any slower than Nadu's. The same red dough chi, the same method of attack, went straight for the white-robed man. The white-robed man's eyes revealed a trace of stubbornness. He was not afraid of death, but to die in the hands of such a petty person, how could he be willing? He would rather die in the hands of the blue-robed man. At least the blue-robed man defeated him with his own strength. It was much better than dying in such a cowardly way. Unfortunately, his light dough chi was only able to protect his body slightly, and he was unable to contend against his opponent. Therefore, he stuck out his chest. Even if he was going to die, he would die like a man. Boom! The blue-robed man's body was thrown into the air, blood wildly spurting out from his mouth. His wind blades had completely disappeared, and the 7 wounds that had previously stopped bleeding began to bleed again. He heavily fell to the ground. His chest had already turned into a charred black. His body was constantly twitching, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. Only then did he manage to stabilize his breathing, but he was already short of breath. Not to mention fighting, it was hard to say whether he was still alive or not. The same sound also sounded from another direction, but there was a slight hint of surprise in the other direction. Nadu did not have time to check whether the blue-robed man was really dead or not. He hurriedly turned around and looked in the direction of Jieshong. After all, 2 demigods killing 2 divine experts. For them, the psychological pressure was very great. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen. As soon as he turned around, Nadu felt a surge of boiling magic elements rushing towards him. Jieshong, who was originally attacking the white-robed man, was standing 10 feet away from the white-robed man in surprise, looking at the white-robed man not far away. A blue light floated down, and a curtain of water gently shrouded the white-robed man. The small wounds quickly healed under the nourishment of the blue light, and the deep wound also stopped bleeding because of the appearance of the blue light. Due to the water elemental's healing, Datu and Jieshong's hands tightened at the same time. Although Datu didn't see what happened, he could guess that Jieshong was pushed back by the owner of the water elemental. The 2 of them were already somewhat timid. Nadu could not help but put on a strong front and shouted, "Who is it? Come out." A lazy voice sounded. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. "I I seem to be the eagle behind the oriole. The two of you really picked up a bargain at the right time. A silver light flashed, and a figure appeared in front of the hoverboatman. It was Nianbing. Nianbing's current appearance was very wretched. The clothes on his body had been struck to ashes by the lightning, and even the long hair that had turned gray due to the absorption of death energy had disappeared. His whole body was charred black, and there were even some wisps of smoke lingering around him. Before he appeared, he had just taken out a rough cloth from his spatial ring and put it on. His charred face was the best protection. Seeing this charred person, Nadu's eyes flashed and said, "You are the one who was struck by lightning?" "Bah," Nianbing said unhappily. "Do you think I want to be struck by lightning?" Nadu and Jieshang both looked a little strange. The two of them had similar figures. Tall and thin like a stick, they looked very strange. Nadu had a horse face, an aquiline nose, a big mouth, and a pair of small yellow eyes that rolled around. His appearance was very wretched. Although Jieshang's appearance was better than his, it was not by much. His face was not as long as Nadu's, but his skin was darker. It was somewhat similar to Nianbing's current skin color. Mind your own business. If you know what's good for you, get out of here immediately. Otherwise, don't blame us brothers for being impolite. Nadu's sharp voice became even more ear-piercing. Nianbing shook his head and said, "I was too lazy to care, but I know this person. I can't let you touch him." As he said that, he pointed at the white-robed man who was gradually recovering his vitality in the water element behind him. What Jieshang heard, Nadu naturally heard as well. His and Jieshang's main target was the white-robed man. The thing that the green-robed man wanted to steal from the white-robed man was what they were most interested in. At this time, after hearing Nianbing's words, Nadu's attitude suddenly became firm. "Looks like you're going against us. Kid, you should know what kind of place this is. If the magical beasts from Death God Waterfall are attracted here, no one will be able to take it." Nianbing chuckled and said, "Don't tell me you're going to give me one last chance to make a choice. If that's the case, then you don't have to waste your breath. Come on, I want to move around. Both of you come at me together." He was very clear about his own strength. He had recovered his magic and was even stronger than before. However, he was still very confident that he could defeat either of the two demigods in front of him. Strength was not only measured by one aspect. Nadu gave Jieshang a look and suddenly roared. His bamboo-like body rushed towards Nianbing like lightning. The red light in his hand condensed into a long spear of fighting aura, bringing along a sky full of red light to pierce Nianbing's every vital point. At the same time, Jieshang also moved. However, his target was not Nianbing, but the white-robed man behind Nianbing. The two moved almost at the same time, and their coordination was very good. Looking at the puffing sound of the red fighting aura, Nianbing stood in place and did not move. Her pair of black eyes flashed with a strange light. Hundreds of icicles appeared in front of her without warning. Strangely, every icicle met the attack of the long spear. These icicles were not ordinary spells of the second step, but were fully compressed icicles. The power of a single icicle was not great, but compared to Nadu's scattered fighting aura, it was not inferior at all. In an instant, balls of ice powder exploded in the air and scattered in all directions. At the same time that the icicles collided with Nianbing, a ball of light also floated out from Nianbing's back and collided with World Shang, who was trying to grab the white-clothed man with his bare hands. Those were not ordinary balls of light, but 5 balls of light that were a mixture of red and red. The balls of light suddenly exploded in front of World Shang, and at the moment of explosion, World Shang could clearly feel that the surrounding space seemed to distort. A pillar of light that was a mixture of blue and red suddenly blocked in front of his chest. The diameter of the pillar of light was only half a foot, but the huge impact caused him to be greatly shocked. He hurriedly channeled all his Do Qi to his palms and collided with the sudden attack. Magic elements once again filled the air. Jieshang was directly knocked back to his previous position, and Nadu's attack had also stopped. The icicles that Nianbing sent out just happened to offset the power of his gorgeous spear attack. His attack was originally used to attract Nianbing's attention. When his fighting aura was exhausted by the icicles, all of the icicles just happened to be completely turned into ice powder, not even a little bit less. Regarding the control of energy, who could compare to Nian Bing? Although his magical power was only comparable to one of the two people in front of him, but the accurate judgment of his Tian Yin acupoint allowed him to display the greatest power of his limited magical power. "You're a magician?" Nadu's sharp voice was full of uncertainty and doubt. Nian Bing indifferently said, "What can't I be?" Nadu's eyes flashed, and Jieshong looked at each other, and the two suddenly laughed. One must know that in the godly mainland, there were very few magicians because the weather in the godly mainland was too harsh, and a magician's body could not withstand it. Therefore, most of the gods were martial arts practitioners, and only a small number of them were dual cultivators of magic and martial arts. The two of them quickly confirmed Nian Bing's identity based on the ice and fire spells that Nian Bing had used in succession, as well as the spatial spell that could compress his attacks. They weren't intimidated by Nian Bing's ability to cast 3 types of spells. Instead, they were overjoyed because they knew that Nian Bing was a powerful being, no matter how high the level of a magician was. When casting a large magic, it required a period of time to chant the incantation. Although the Nian Bing in front of them made them feel a little pressured, but she was not strong enough to win against the two of them combined. Therefore, once they knew that the other party was a magician, the two of them finally felt relieved. The red fire element of their dough, Qi, continued to rise, and at the same time, they locked onto Nian Bing. Nian Bing laughed. "It seems that you guys are looking down on magicians. Perhaps the person you met before was not a real magician?" Jieshong said disdainfully. "A real magician? I want to see what kind of abilities you call a real magician has." Nian Bing smiled. "You will see. And right now?" As she spoke, the gray line between her eyebrows suddenly lit up, and a rainbow light floated out, turning into threads of light that surrounded her body. Seeing the change between Nian Bing's eyebrows, Nadu and Jieshong trembled at the same time and exclaimed in unison, "Tian acupoint?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "Why, you know about the Tian Yin acupoint too? A magician and a magician with the Tian Yin acupoint are two completely different concepts. Moreover, my Tian Yin acupoint should have entered the final stage. Although it is only the initial stage of the final stage, I think it should be enough to deal with you guys." Nadu and Jieshong were shocked by the appearance of the Tian Yin acupoint. As the acupoints used by deities to measure their strength, all deities knew that the most important acupoints were the Tian Yin acupoint and the Huangji acupoint. However, it was too difficult to open the Tian Yin acupoint, especially when other acupoints were opened, and the Tian Yin acupoint could only be placed last, which made most deities give up on opening the Tian Yin acupoint. Therefore, when they suddenly saw that Nian Bing actually had the Tian Yin acupoint, they were immediately shocked. However, their surprise did not end there. The rainbow light surrounding Nian Bing was transparent, and through the threads of light, they could clearly see Nian Bing within. Suddenly, the rainbow light turned silver. Nadu and Jieshong were still in shock when they realized that the space around them was completely distorted, and a strong tearing feeling caused the fire tribute combat energy around them to fluctuate violently. The two's combat energy immediately changed from the original red to silver Saint combat energy, and within the silver light, there were also traces of golden light. Clearly, they had reached the peak of swordsman's level. Saint combat energy that was close to God combat energy could not be destroyed by spatial tears, but it was not over yet. The light around Nian Bing's body suddenly changed from silver to yellow, and the ground trembled at this moment. Suddenly, black spikes emerged from the solid black ground. Fortunately, the trembling of the ground alerted Nadu and Jieshong, and the two of them flew into the air in time. They dodged most of the attacks, and those that they could not dodge were dealt with by their combat energy. At this time, the two of them were already covered in a layer of cold sweat. If the attacks that Nian Bing blocked at the beginning were only ordinary magic, then the space and earth magic that appeared one after another were at least of the 7th level. What kind of concept was a 7th level magic attack without warning? Tom did not give them much time to think. The light around Yin Bing's body changed again, but there was still no chanting sound like Nadu and the others were expecting. This time, the light turned red, and so did the sky. The whole world seemed to be burning, and the air became slightly distorted due to the scorching heat. Blue fireballs fell from the sky like meteors, carrying a surging aura as they flew towards Nadu and Jieshang. A warrior's do-chi was indeed very strong. If a warrior of the same level encountered a magician, they would always have some advantage because they could quickly launch an attack. If the distance was far, they would also have the opportunity to escape in most cases. However, when it came to real attack power, a warrior's do-chi was actually inferior to a magician's. Therefore, once a magician's magic was launched before a warrior's attack, the warrior would generally lose. A warrior's advantage was a mage's incantation. However, if the incantation time suddenly disappeared, the magic could be used as combat energy. This was not a situation that any warrior could withstand. Flame Meteor, a fire spell of the 8th level. This spell did not pose a real threat to 2 top-level swordsman experts. However, Nadu and Jieshang had leapt into the air to avoid the rock piercing below, so they had nowhere to borrow strength. Now that they were suddenly met with the flame meteor, they only had one choice, and that was to fight it head-on. When the fiery meteor collided with the silver Saint Do-chi and caused a beautiful firework to erupt, the light surrounding Yin Bing's body changed once again. He had even severed his connection with the fiery meteor. There was a warm smile on his face. This time around, many 2-colored ice balls appeared one after another. This was only a 6th level ice spell, but if 10 dual-colored spheres of ice were to appear at once, it would not be easy to deal with. Moreover, these dual-colored spheres of ice were combined with the blue and green radiance around Yin Bing's body. When the 2 unlucky bastards were swept up from the bottom, their power became even more terrifying. In other words, who would be willing to face such an attack? The fusion spell finally appeared in front of the 2 demigods who were at the end of their rope after dealing with the fire meteors. The timing was perfect. Just as they were about to land on the ground after dealing with half of the flames, the ice tornado was already right under their feet. The power of the tornado was just enough to envelop the 2 demigods. Yin Bing shook her head with a smile. The light around her body changed again. This time, it turned black and represented death. A huge figure slowly appeared behind her. It was a dark figure that was 3 feet tall. The aura of death silently spread to the surroundings. At this moment, the surroundings were filled with the aura of death. In the hands of the huge figure, there was a blade and a scythe. It represented the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Violent explosions accompanied by the radiance of magic elements scattered in all directions. In order to protect their lives, Nadu and Jieshang had already lit up all kinds of radiance around them. Their badges, armors, and weapons appeared one after another. However, in their incomplete state, they could only feel pain when facing the 10th level ice tornado. Chapter 178. The fusion of ice and wind sent the 2 demigod experts flying again. Their bodies floated in the air as they let out roars of unwillingness and pain. Their shrill cries were filled with anger and unwillingness. Drops of blood splattered in the air. Although the fusion magic didn't kill them, the sharp aura of the 2 elements of ice and wind had been deeply imprinted in their bodies. Their fighting strength had been reduced by more than 50%. Coupled with the injuries on their bodies, each of them had less than 30% of their fighting strength left. At this moment, Nadu and Jieshang both thought of one thing, and that was to escape. Yes, they had lost the confidence to fight now. The only thing they could do was to escape. However, just as they were about to summon the last of their strength to escape this terrifying magic cage, the aura of death had quietly shrouded their bodies. The last thing Nadu and Jieshang saw in their lives was Yin Bing's smile. However, in their eyes, it was the smile of the Grim Reaper. The gray sickle was transparent, and it brought out a phantom of black light in the air. Everything was so simple. With a perfect swing, the gray figure had disappeared silently. At the same time, everything was over. Nadu and Jieshong were still in the air, ready to escape. However, their bodies had already solidified. They were suspended in the air in silence, as if they had always existed there. The light in between his eyebrows retracted, and the magical aura around his body disappeared. Nian Bing did not even look at the two demigods in the air. He turned around and walked towards a man in white behind him. If they could still escape from the attack of the level 11 Dark Forbidden Spell, Kiss of the Grim Reaper, even after being weakened by 70%, then Nadu and Jieshong would not be demigods. Unfortunately, they were only demigods. When Nian Bing turned around, the two bamboo poles in the air had already turned into bamboo powder. They disappeared without leaving a trace. There was no longer a trace of their aura in this world. Nian Bing's expression was very calm. When he came in front of the man in white, the first thing he did was to take off his clothes. Then, water elements naturally condensed around his body. It turned into waves of water, constantly washing his body. The man in white had already recovered some of his strength under the healing of the water element and his own light combat aura. He was surprised to see that the charcoal head in front of him was gradually becoming clean. The surprise gradually turned into horror. "You, how could it be you?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "You still remember me, Senior Sacred Teacher." As he spoke, he bowed to the Sacred Teacher. That's right, this resolute white-clothed man was precisely the Sacred Sovereign who had completely activated the ability of the Radiant Light Blade that could pierce through heaven and earth. He was also the Sacred Sovereign who had guided Nian Bing to the devil-devouring blade. Although Nian Bing had never seen him before, his voice and divine aura were deeply imprinted in her mind. Therefore, when Nian Bing's spiritual power saw him, she had already recognized him. The Sacred Teacher looked up and down at Nian Bing and could not help but frown slightly. As the owner of light, he could clearly feel the death aura on Nian Bing's body. Although Nian Bing had hidden it very well, he himself was the source of death. "Nian Bing, weren't you in the Yangon continent? How did you come here and become like this?" Nian Bing sighed and said, "It's a long story. Senior Sacred Teacher, how do you feel? Are you better?" The Sacred Teacher smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying, "Thank you for saving me. However, my injuries are too serious. In order to have a chance of winning, I used that kind of attack at the cost of exhausting my strength. I have already hurt myself. I'm afraid that I won't be able to recover without a few decades of hard work. This is all thanks to your water magic. Otherwise, I'm afraid that even without those two people, I might not be able to survive. It's just that I don't understand. You're obviously full of death aura, but why is the magic you use so pure? I remember that you practice all kinds of magic. Looking at you now, you should have already reached the peak. However, even if you have reached the peak, as a magician, how can you not chant incantations?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "This is not a secret. When one's spiritual power reaches a level where it can resonate with the magic elements in the air and become a true friend with them, then these magic elements no longer need a specific voice to command. As long as one's own magic power is used as a guide, coupled with the control of spiritual power, it will be able to produce magic power naturally. In fact, every magician understands this principle. However, to be able to resonate with the magic elements and produce the power one needs is not that simple. I'm just a little bit lucky. That's why I'm able to do it." Was he lucky? If one's luck was so good that they could come back from the dead, perhaps not many people would choose to do so. Nian Bing's current achievements could only be described as a miracle. When he left the Green Mountain, his magic power had indeed not changed, but his spiritual power had entered the peak. There was a kind of wonderful feeling in his mind. He clearly knew that he had entered the ultimate realm of the celestial eye acupoint. Although this realm was not complete, the first effect that manifested was that magic no longer required incantations, no matter what stage it was at. The 11th step forbidden spell was the most powerful magic that Nian Bing could cast now. Even this kind of magic did not require incantations. He firmly believed that even if he was facing a priest of the snow goddess, he would still have a very good chance of winning. The consumption of magic power did not decrease when casting magic, but the time needed to chant incantations had disappeared. Relying on her special physique and the innate aura of death, Nian Bing had a recovery speed that far exceeded that of ordinary magicians. The wounds on the sacred teacher's body had already gradually healed under the effect of the water element that Nian Bing continuously urged. However, the internal injuries were not so easy to heal. He cultivated the light fighting aura and had a much stronger recovery ability than ordinary warriors. However, once he received a heavy injury, the recovery magic's effect on him was extremely limited. Most of the time, he could only rely on his own recovery ability. How did you end up fighting with that Aeolus? He seemed to want to snatch something from you. Nian Bing asked. The sacred teacher nodded and sighed deeply, saying, "If I had known that the continent of gods was like this, I would definitely not have chosen to come here. However, it's too late to say anything now." Nian Bing said, "Yes. How is this the world of gods? This is clearly the continent of hell." The sacred teacher shook his head, saying, "No, it's not because of the environment here. In fact, I really like the environment here. Under the pressure of the environment, everyone has to work hard to survive. However, I'm tired of the relationship between the gods. Here, the gods only have to scheme against each other. Don't talk about kinship or friendship. It's only a relationship of mutual benefit. This is the root of my disgust. On the surface, all the gods have to accept the rule of the main gods. Now that the 7 main gods have awakened from their cultivation, they have never had any effective control over the gods. In order to survive, everyone here was extremely selfish. Perhaps it was only when the Lost Empire threatened them that they were able to band together. They simply don't understand that only by being completely united can they survive better. Fortunately, the seal here prevents the gods from setting foot on the Yangon continent. Otherwise, everything would become chaotic. You should have heard that in this place, for food, people can actually eat other people. This is simply unimaginable in the Yangon continent." Nian Bing nodded, saying, "Then have you ever thought of leaving this place? Go back to the Yangon continent." The sacred teacher shook his head, saying, "Not to mention that I can't leave. Even if I could, I wouldn't leave. Those main gods have treated me well. With me here, the relationship between the gods can be balanced. I don't want to see the thing that I fear the most happen." Nian Bing understood that the sacred teacher was most afraid of the gods going to the Yangon continent. If such a thing happened, the Yangon continent would face a huge catastrophe. "How many gods are there on the continent of gods?" The sage master said, "There are about 10,000 of them. I'm not sure about the exact number. The 2 you just killed are considered to be above average among the gods. If they were to cultivate for another 100 years, they might be able to enter the god level. In addition to the 7 main gods, there are 60 to 70 gods. Among them, the strongest will be appointed as the successor of the main gods. Just like Aeolus, who fought with me before. He is several hundred years older than me, and he is a genius at cultivating Wen Do Qi. If the gods can unite, their strength can only be described as terrifying. Think about it. 10,000 pugilist experts, including nearly 1,000 demigods on the same level as swordsmen, dozens of gods stronger than godmasters, and the 7 main gods. If they want to flatten the Yangon continent, it will be a very easy matter. Oh, by the way, you came from the Yangon continent. Was the bottle of Mordas really snatched away?" Nian Bing nodded silently, saying, "Yes, it was stolen by a lich with his subordinates. Originally, they weren't a match for the Dragon Kings. However, they managed to seize the opportunity when the Dragon Kings were giving birth and made a sudden move." Sacred Teacher smiled faintly, saying, "This is a good thing." Nian Bing was stunned. "Good thing? Don't tell me you are not afraid of the war when the Lost Continent returns?" Sacred Teacher said indifferently, "That is what I want to see the most." After 10,000 years of recuperation, although the number of gods did not increase, the vitality has basically recovered. If this continues, one day the gods will not be able to bear the life here and set foot on the Yangon continent. At that time, it will be a disaster for the entire human race. A group of selfish gods will destroy the entire human world. In order for more humans to live peacefully, in order to maintain the peace of the Yangon continent, I hope that the lost continent will return. The battle between the strong will definitely make the godly continent dormant again. Even if the godly continent wins, they will not be able to do anything for a period of time. As for the lost continent, its area is not much smaller than the Yangon continent, so there's no need for it to affect the Yangon continent. Even if there's an effect with the number of humans in the lost continent, it will only lead to a revolution and not the destruction of the human race. Nian Bing, you have a unique advantage. I hope you can work hard for the future of the human race. Nian Bing smiled faintly, saying, maybe, but I only hope to live a peaceful life with my family. I came to the godly continent because I was forced to. Here, I only want to recover my life force. There are some things you don't know. In this godly continent, even the main gods can't make the decision. It is not that easy to leave here. Who can say what will happen in the future? Let's take it one step at a time. I am also a selfish person, but if someone wants to destroy the environment I live in, I will not stand by and do nothing. That Aeolus doesn't seem to be dead yet. Do you want me to help you get rid of him? The sacred teacher looked at Aeolus in the distance. At this moment, Aeolus was slowly crawling up from the ground. The front of his clothes was already soaked in blood. Originally, he had been lying on the ground pretending to be dead, but after hearing Nian Bing's words, he had no choice but to crawl up. His breathing was somewhat hurried. The battle with the sacred teacher had consumed most of his battle strength, and then he was hit by Nadu's full power attack. Although he used his own cultivation to suppress the heavy injuries, he had lost most of his battle strength. From the process of Nian Bing killing Nadu and Bibi, he was very clear that even if he was at full strength, it would not be easy to beat this mysterious person. Nian Bing's powerful magic attack, without chanting, left a deep impression on him. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fear. As a selfish god, he was very clear about his own fate. The sacred teacher shook his head and said, forget it. If I also kill them, then what difference would there be between me and these fellows? Aeolus, you should leave. Not everyone is like you. Aeolus was stunned. He looked at the sacred teacher, then looked at Nian Bing. His eyes revealed a complicated light, but he did not leave. Instead, he walked step by step towards the sacred teacher. Seeing his staggering appearance, Nian Bing could not help but frown and say, what? The sacred teacher is willing to let you go, but you still don't want to leave? If Aeolus was his enemy, he would have already killed him. At this moment, Aeolus no longer had the slightest arrogance. Leave? Leave where? Even if you don't kill me, if I leave now, I will meet a magical beast that can take my life. The sacred teacher said with some amusement, aren't you afraid that I will change my mind now? Aeolus bitterly smiled and said, anyway, I am going to die. I would rather die in your hands and be eaten by magical beasts. As he said this, he had already arrived in front of Nian Bing and the sacred teacher. He sat down on the ground and did not say anything. He did not care whether Nian Bing and the sacred teacher would hurt him or not. He just cultivated on his own. What he said was the truth. In the godly continent, if you did not have the strength to protect yourself, only death would await you. The sacred teacher smiled and said, Aeolus, compared to those despicable fellows, you are quite straightforward. Good, then let's cultivate together to recover. He was naturally wary of Aeolus. Although he was not a match for Aeolus in terms of recovery speed, Aeolus could not compare to him. However, he was not in a hurry. He turned to Nian Bing and said, don't you want to know what he wanted to get when he was chasing me? Nian Bing shook his head and said, that's your secret, and it has nothing to do with me. I just want to know why your strength doesn't seem to have increased much compared to when you were in the Yangon continent, even though you've lived for thousands of years. From the battle between the sacred teacher and Aeolus, he had already seen many things. Although the sacred teacher and Aeolus were powerful, they were not as inconceivable as he had imagined. The sacred teacher looked at Nian Bing, said with satisfaction, when you received the approval of the Holy Radiance Blade, I already knew that there were many similarities between you and me. However, in the godly continent, Most people have lived for more than 1,000 years, and there are even some who have lived for more than 10,000 years. However, the strongest humans are only able to open 6 apertures and have the strength of a 14th level over God. At least 4 over gods are needed to display a 15th level attack or defense. In fact, this question was not difficult to answer. The human body had endless potential. It was also a huge treasure trove. As long as one continued to excavate the treasures in the treasure trove, one could become stronger. However, there was a limit to the human body. Even if one continued to excavate, however, when one's potential was unlocked to a certain extent, it would be much more difficult to improve. Simply put, the 50 years from birth to the age of 50 was the best golden period for cultivation. Often, as long as one had a certain level of talent and was willing to work hard, 50 years was enough for them to reach the 11th level. This was what the Yangon continent called a swordsman or a magus. However, the 11th step was a dividing line. From here on, one could begin. From there, more than 90% of practitioners could only reach the 11th level. Those who could break through to the 12th level were extremely rare. If a human did not reach the 12th level at the age of 100, then he would never be able to break through again. He could only be like an ordinary person, losing his life due to the baptism of time. However, once he broke through to the 12th level, he would go from the acquired level to the innate level. His lifespan would be cleansed by the innate chi. At that time, age would no longer be a limit. As long as the innate chi was present, he could continue to live until his body could no longer bear it. The human body was not inferior to the dragons in many aspects. As long as we had the innate chi, our lifespan would not be shorter than that of the dragons. However, after the 11th level, it would be difficult to improve further. It required continuous cultivation and extremely high comprehension. Along the way, there would be some innate chi. Only then would it be possible to break through. And such a breakthrough would be very difficult to happen without a miracle. I was annoyed that it would be extremely difficult to improve my strength after the 11th level. The higher I went, the more difficult it would be. Among the gods, my luck was not bad. I had already reached the 13th level. Although I was still far away from the 14th level, it was not impossible. Aeolus was slightly stronger than me. He was already at the edge of level 14. I was annoyed that he was able to become the successor of the main god. Normal demigods haven't even reached the 12th level. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to kill 2 of them so easily. Nian Bing said, "What about the true gods? What was the rank of a true god?" I heard that when the Lost Continent was taken away by them, they used a super forbidden spell, the 17th level space-time transfer. The sacred teacher looked at Nian Bing in surprise. "So you also know about the existence of true gods. It seems that you know quite a lot." The gods had also secretly calculated the power levels of the true gods. Judging from the individual power levels of the 4 true gods, they should all be around the 16th rank. Although they were only 2 ranks higher than the main gods, I was almost certain that even if all the main gods were added together, they would only be able to reach the 16th rank. He was no match for a true god. The higher the level, the greater the difference in strength. As for the 17th level super forbidden spell that they could use when joining hands, that would be enough to destroy the heavens and earth. I even thought that if there was an 18th level super forbidden spell, then the world we live in would be completely destroyed. Fortunately, that kind of heaven-defying ability hasn't appeared yet. A true god of the 16th rank, he should be somewhere between the 11th and 12th rank. He didn't know if he could contend against the ice goddess priestess of the 12th rank with the addition of the heavenly Iacupoint. Thinking of this, he asked, "Senior sacred teacher, with my current strength, if I were to face a mage who can use a 12th level forbidden spell, and at the same time, she has opened 3 acupoints, including the Huangji acupoint, what are my chances of winning?" The sacred teacher stared blankly for a moment. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and said, "That's hard to say. I can see that your mental strength has already reached a rather high realm. Even Aeolus and I might not be able to match up to you. Facing a mage, even if your overall strength isn't as good as hers, with your current mental strength, it shouldn't be a problem for you to interfere with her magic. If you have other conditions, it might not be impossible for you to win. However, you have to be careful of the Huangji acupoint. Although that so-called strongest acupoint isn't absolutely the strongest, its key point is that it can instantly condense all the energy in the human body into a single point to launch an attack. So, if the opponent's strength is higher than yours and you can't defeat her in one go, I advise you to run. Yangon Continent, I really miss those days. Perhaps I can go back very soon. Do you know what Elis want from me? It's actually a token issued by the main gods. There was a problem with Miorda's bottle of sealing, and the main gods attached great importance to it. So, they decided to send some experts to Yangon Continent to investigate this matter and strive to snatch back Miorda's bottle of sealing. However, it's not easy to leave the godly continent. So, after the main gods decided on the candidates, they gave each person a token. Use this token to gather at a valley in the southwest of the godly continent. Then, the main gods will work together to open the seal and send us out. Because I came from Yangon Continent, and I'm at the 13th level of strength. So, I became one of the emissaries of the godly continent. Elis also wants to go to Yangon Continent, so he came to steal my token. Nianbing glanced at Elis. She suddenly said, I see. Perhaps in the near future, we'll meet again in Yangon Continent. How many deities will go to the godly mainland this time? The sacred teacher said, not many. If too many gods appear, it will definitely cause chaos. So this time, there won't be more than 10 gods going to Yangon Continent, but they'll all be at the peak of the demigod rank or god rank. To deal with a dark force led by a lich will be enough. The key is to find them in time. Sigh, I'm very conflicted now. I didn't want to take this mission, but when I thought about going back to Yangon Continent, my heart's singing urged me to take it. I wonder what the current Yangon Continent looks like after so many years. Nianbing frowned. I don't think it's a good thing for gods to go to Yangon Continent. If gods are all selfish, then it's hard to guarantee that they won't do anything. The sacred teacher said, it's already decided. There's no way to stop it. I just hope that when I reach Yangon Continent, I can get in touch with the 7 Dragon Kings as soon as possible and cooperate with them to ensure the success of this mission. Nianbing looked at Elis, who was cultivating, and said, Sacred Teacher Senior, you should rest for a while. I'll guard you. The sacred teacher smiled and shook his head. It looks like you have something to do. You don't need to guard here. Actually, because this place is very close to Death Waterfall, gods usually don't come here. Nianbing's eyes flashed coldly, and he gave the sacred teacher a look. The sacred teacher shook his head and smiled. Don't worry. Although this Elis is a bit overbearing, he's not bad among gods. He won't make a move against me again. Go. If fate wills it, we'll definitely meet again. While saying that, the sacred teacher sat cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes. Because his body had recovered a little, a layer of milky white light was emitted from his body, enveloping himself and Elis. Although this layer of barrier's defensive power was not strong, it had a certain degree of mimicry, blending with the surrounding environment. A ball of yellow light lit up around Nianbing's body. The yellow light grew stronger and stronger, causing the surrounding ground to tremble slightly. A light flashed in Nianbing's black eyes, and the sturdy black rocks in the south began to move. Several huge rocks grew out and enveloped the Sage Master and the Wind God. He drew 4 magic arrays on the black rocks in succession before stopping. Due to the increase in his spiritual power, drawing magic arrays had become much easier. With these defenses, Nianbing believed that as long as they didn't encounter 2 powerful magic beasts, the sacred teacher and Yishuan wouldn't be harmed. At that moment, he didn't stay any longer. Green light surrounded his body, and he floated up. He urged the wind element to escort him in the direction of the Red Mountain. As long as he passed the Red Mountain, he would be able to see Halogen. In just a short while, Red Mountain was already in sight. Nianbing controlled the cool breeze around him and stopped in midair. He clearly remembered Sheng Luan's description of the Jabeasts. He didn't want to become a target for the Jabeasts. He drifted down and identified his surroundings, looking for the path he had come from. The surroundings were quiet, and only the various magic elements in the air fluctuated. Although the sky was still covered with dark clouds, Nianbing's luck was not bad. There was no magic storm. The tall red mountain pierced through the clouds. Nianbing's glabella lit up, and a faint rainbow-colored light barrier enveloped a 1-foot radius around his body. He didn't have to do anything deliberately, and his magic was already under the control of his spiritual power, ready to deal with any changes that might occur. He still remembered clearly the time when he was struck by the broken sword. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded in the sky. No, the sound didn't come from the sky, but from a mountain. This sound appeared abruptly. The fire elements on the red mountain violently fluctuated, and the red clouds formed by the Zhe were clearly rushing in one direction. Halfway up the mountain, a black light suddenly lit up, and a surge of energy surged out. It was actually fighting with the Zhe from below. Not good, Nianbing shouted in a low voice, and rushed up the mountain without any hesitation. He was too familiar with that roar, and coupled with that black duki, it was clearly halogen. Nianbing leapt into the air without a care in the world and rushed towards the source of the sound. At the same time, the protective light around his body turned blue, and huge dual-colored ice balls shot towards Jabi's group with ear-piercing screeches. The protective light instantly turned green, and the ice-earth ceiling sphere merged perfectly with the tornado. Immediately, a hole was blasted out from the backs of the hundreds of paragons, attracting their attention. Still in the air, Nianbing had already seen Halogen's appearance. Halogen had changed. His dwarf divine armor was full of dirt. His hair and beard were a lot longer than the last time they parted ways, and the big axe in his hand had doubled in size. It was not the axe that had expanded, but the black axe was emitting a substantial duki. Nianbing remembered very clearly that Halogen had once said that the Zhe were a race that held grudges, so he didn't kill a single Zhe last time. But now it was different. Halogen was crazily chopping with his axe again and again, and at least 30 Zhe corpses were scattered around him. Bolts of purple heavenly fire transformed into bolts of lightning and bombarded him, but they were all neutralized by his giant axe. At this time, Halogen's offensive was exceptionally strong, and every time he chopped with his axe, the red mountain seemed to be split open. Although the heavenly fire was strong, the Zhe's formation had already been disrupted by Halogen. The black battle axe turned into a huge black ball around his body, and the purple heavenly fire was unable to penetrate it. The ice balls in the tornado were very powerful, but unfortunately, the ones below were the Zhe's. When Nianbing's attack just appeared, the Zhe's formation was immediately disrupted, and the pressure around Halogen also decreased a lot. But the Zhe's reaction was very fast, and they immediately turned around. Flames burst out from their sharp horns, and purple lightning flashed alternately. The ice balls in the air immediately turned into ice powder. Chapter 179. Nianbing naturally didn't expect the ice ceiling sphere to cause any damage to the demonic beasts. As long as it could temporarily block their attacks, it would be enough. The heavenly flames were the sovereigns of fire, but the power of the demonic beast's heavenly flames was limited. In an instant, Nianbing completed his next spell. A blue radiance rose from his back, condensing into a blue shadow. Snowflakes spun and fell like sharp blades, just like the meteor fire shower before. An ice attribute spell of the 8th step, Ice Hell, was instantly formed. Violent ice elements floated down, coming in contact with the purple heavenly flames, immediately releasing a thick layer of water vapor. Spells of the 8th step were unable to block the heavenly flames. Nianbing's goal was very simple. He only hoped that under the effect of his spell, he would be able to confuse the demonic beasts. But this time, Nianbing miscalculated. The reason why the demonic beasts were called demonic beasts was because their attack accuracy was incomparable to any other magical beast. This was because they possessed mental strength much stronger than ordinary magical beasts, and could easily lock onto the position of their target. Therefore, when the water vapor filled the air, dozens of purple heavenly flames had already rushed out, shooting straight at Nianbing. Facing the attack, Although Nian Bing was startled, he didn't panic. The radiance around his body instantly turned silver, and with a low shout, he activated the spatial mirror. Immediately, four silver mirrors appeared around his body. Every heavenly flame that attacked the silver mirrors would bring along a layer of silver light and be reflected in another direction. This spatial spell of the seventh step originally required a lengthy incantation and wasn't very practical, so Nian Bing hadn't used it before. But now it was different. He could activate the spell without chanting, and it couldn't be more suitable to block the demonic beast's lightning-like heavenly flames. When the water vapor dispersed, Nian Bing had already changed his position. After blocking several attacks from the demonic beasts, he arrived directly above Halogen. Although he was strong, Nian Bing judged that he was at most at the 13th step. Facing so many demonic beasts, it was already very difficult for him to protect himself. If it weren't for the extremely powerful battle axe in his hand and the divine dwarf armor on his body, Halogen's defense would have been broken through long ago. A black silhouette emerged from Nian Bing's body and arrived beside Halogen in a flash. The black blade radiance carried the purest aura of death as it instantly sliced apart the two bodies. A surging aura of death suddenly appeared, causing the attacks to slow down. At this moment, 5 huge shadows appeared above Zhe without warning. Although Zhe's body wasn't small, it paled in comparison to these 5 huge shadows. 5 black shadows descended like 5 mountains, and with a loud bang, they surrounded the black figure. A dozen demonic beasts didn't manage to escape in time and were all crushed into meat patties by the huge black figure. The dark demon rat's body was half its original size. During the Death God waterfall, not only did Emperor Kurobutsu recover his dark ability, it also benefited and evolved to the 7th step like the flying divine pig. The other 4 black demonic beasts were the flying divine pig, the 9-melon poisonous spider, the green-eyed serpent, and the black tiger king. This green-eyed serpent was 1 size bigger than the one that Nian Bing killed. Although the 9-melon poisonous spider's body was smaller than the flying divine pig, its 9 long legs covered a larger area than the flying divine pig. The front of the 9 legs were like 9 huge scythes, shining with a faint blue light. As one of the 4 demonic beasts that guarded the Death God waterfall, and also one of the 4 demonic beasts of the God's continent, its attack power wasn't any weaker than the green-eyed serpent. The Black Tiger King was the smallest of the 5 demonic beasts, but it was still more than 5 meters long. Its gray body was covered with black patterns, and it roared at the sky, causing the other demonic beasts around it to retreat. The sudden appearance of the 5 huge demonic beasts changed the situation. The flying divine pig, the 9-melon poisonous spider, the green-eyed serpent, and the Black Tiger King were the 4 dark demonic beasts that guarded the Death God waterfall. Their combined strength wasn't any weaker than the demonic beasts, especially the green-eyed serpent. Its powerful defense couldn't even be hurt by the heavenly fire, and its huge body was able to block a large amount of heavenly fire attacks. The higher the level of the demonic beasts, the more intelligent they were. The sudden appearance of the powerful demonic beasts immediately caused the demonic beasts to retreat. They gathered together and continuously shot out heavenly fire attacks. Emperor Kurobutsu let out a long roar and floated on top of the flying divine pig's head. He pointed the demon-devouring blade forward, and the 5 demonic beasts immediately attacked the demonic beasts. The dark aura and heavenly fire constantly clashed in the air. The demonic beasts retreated while using heavenly fire to block these powerful demonic beasts. If there was only one of these demonic beasts, the demonic beasts would definitely be able to surround and kill it. However, there were 5 of them at once, and with Emperor Kurobutsu's accusation, the demonic beasts were immediately suppressed. Under the surging energy bombardment, a dozen more demonic beasts were destroyed by the dark aura. After suddenly losing his target, Halogen's axe landed on the hard rock of the Red Mountain, making a loud noise. He was already at the end of his rope, so his body shook slightly and he gasped for breath. As soon as Nian Bing landed beside Halogen, she clearly felt an aura of despair from his body. She couldn't help but be shocked. She quickly asked, "Halogen, how are you? Are you hurt?" Halogen looked up blankly. When he saw Nian Bing, his eyes suddenly turned red. He pulled up the black battle axe on the ground. "It's you. I'm going to kill you." He raised the battle axe, almost crazily and fiercely chopped at Nian Bing. Nian Bing was shocked. Her figure flashed, and she used magic to teleport to the side, dodging Halogen's attack. She anxiously said, "Halogen, what's wrong with you?" "It's me, I'm Nian Bing." Halogen stood there blankly. Suddenly, he let go of the battle axe. The battle energy on the black battle axe disappeared, and it fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Dead, all dead, all dead. Nian Bing was stunned. She didn't care that Halogen might attack her. She floated to Halogen's side, and a milky white light shone. The light element awakening spell was cast, enveloping Halogen's body. What's going on? Who's dead? An ominous premonition arose in his heart. His face couldn't help but become dignified. Under the effect of the awakening spell, the confusion in Halogen's eyes gradually disappeared. He raised his head and looked at Nian Bing. His eyes were full of complicated light. Dead. All dead. They're all dead. It's all because of you. It's all because of you. He, who had just sobered up, instantly entered a state of madness. His right hand sucked, and the black battle axe returned to his hand. Once again, he waved it at Nian Bing. "Halogen, wake up." This time, Nian Bing didn't dodge. His eyes shone brightly. His spiritual power pierced Halogen's mind like a sharp needle, and a shout came from inside him. The black battle axe stopped 3 inches in front of Nian Bing's forehead. Nian Bing's protective multicolored light fluctuated under the influence of that black battle energy. Nian Bing's gaze became abnormally calm. Looking at Halogen, she said softly, "Halogen, my good brother, wake up and tell me. Tell me what's going on." Halogen looked at Nian Bing with a complicated expression. Suddenly, he roared, turned around, and ran down the mountain. Nian Bing didn't dare to be negligent. This time, she didn't use magic. Relying on her tyrannical body, she bounced up and chased after Halogen. When Nian Bing retreated, Emperor Kurobutsu immediately used the devouring magic blade to recall the 5 magical beasts. He launched the last wave of attacks at the Zebis and chased after Nian Bing. Halogen's speed was faster than before. He ran forward with all his might. He didn't even look at the road. When he encountered a rock in his way, he immediately chopped it with his axe and crushed it. It didn't take long for the black sacred mountain to be in sight. Halogen's body leaped like a star toward the summit. Nian Bing followed closely behind. She was about 30 meters behind him, but didn't overtake him. When the two of them reached the summit of the sacred mountain, Halogen finally stopped. With a plop, he knelt on the summit of the sacred mountain and burst into tears. Nian Bing stood beside Halogen in silence. She didn't ask anything. Although she didn't know what had happened, Halogen's current state was extremely stimulated. Only by letting him vent would his body not be affected. Halogen's cries shook the surrounding ground. In extreme pain, his hands had already dug into the ground. Around his body, the black fighting aura was unstable. After a full half an hour, Halogen's cries gradually stopped. Nian Bing walked behind him and once again cast the light element, sobering incantation to appease Halogen's inner pain. "Halogen, what happened in the end? What's wrong with you?" Nian Bing asked in a low voice. Although she didn't want to stimulate Halogen again, she was anxious to know what had happened. Halogen slowly stood up, picked up his big axe, turned his head, coldly looked at Nian Bing, and said, "You come with me." With that, he kicked away the rock blocking the dwarf's cave and jumped in. Nian Bing had already faintly felt something. She hurriedly followed Halogen into the dwarf's cave. It seemed that nothing had happened here. Everything was still the same as before. However, the aura in the cave was a bit more deathly still. This feeling of deathly stillness made Ling Nian Bing feel uneasy in her heart. Finally, she followed Halogen to the place where the dwarves lived in the depths of the cave. Halogen went directly into Lotta's room. There was no one in the room, but the whole room was full of magical aura. Nian Bing's familiar and cordial feeling seemed to be constantly calling him. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the 6 treasured swords shining with various colors on the stone table. They were his 6 divine swords. The 6 divine swords had all changed. Compared with before, the light of the divine swords was now more active. The light of the treasured swords, which had been scattered without restraint, was now completely restrained. Nian Bing clearly felt that the 6 divine swords seemed to be alive. Although they were lying on the stone table in silence, they were full of vitality. Halogen, where's Aunt Lotta? What about Uncle Rong and the others? Nian Bing looked at Halogen, who was standing in front of the table without saying a word, and asked subconsciously. Halogen raised his head and looked coldly at Nian Bing, saying, "Dead, they're all dead. In this holy mountain, apart from you, I'm the only one who's still alive." "What?" Nian Bing exclaimed. Although he had vaguely guessed it, hearing it from Halogen's mouth still brought him great shock. Nian Bing hadn't been in contact with the dwarves for a long time, but Lotta's kind look, as well as the enthusiasm and tolerance of the dwarves, had left a deep impression on him. He didn't have many friends. After coming to the Holy Mountain, he had really regarded the dwarves as his friends. How could this be? How could this be? How did Aunt Lotta and the others die? Could it be that they were gods? Nian Bing's heart clenched. Strong feelings gushed out from his eyes. Tears flowed down his cheeks, and a sad atmosphere filled the whole room. Looking at Nian Bing's sad appearance, Halogen's complexion was a little better, but when he heard Nian Bing's question, he immediately became agitated again. Gods? They're not gods at all. It's you who killed them. If it weren't for you, how could my mother die? How could my uncles die? His fists cracked because of excessive clenching. Nian Bing's body shook, and his brain buzzed. He was smart, so he immediately thought of the key to the problem. Could it be that Aunt Lotta and the others helped me to refine the sword? So Halogen coldly snorted, took out a piece of stone from his armor, and threw it to Nian Bing. My mother asked me to give this to you. 3 days ago, they finished refining the sword and left this world. Nian Bing received the stone in his hand and saw that it was engraved with beautiful small words. Nian Bing, I believe you will come back. After Halogen sent you to the Death God waterfall, I haven't seen you for a long time, and I always thought you were dead, but I believe that you are still alive. Because from the 6 swords you left behind, I can feel your presence. Otherwise, these 6 swords will become ownerless. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. This is the best place for us. As the master forger of the dwarf race, to be able to die because of forging a super divine tool is a blessing for us. When writing this, I can already conclude that we will succeed and the many years of research will not be in vain. Maybe you are wondering why we have just known each other for a short time, but we will use our lives as the price to help you forge the divine swords. In fact, the reason is very simple. You have brought us hope and let us really taste the delicious food of our hometown. Your unreserved and unintentional behavior has already made us recognize you as a friend of our dwarf race. Before forging, I discussed with Rong Rong, and we also considered many things and finally decided to do this. You don't have to blame yourself, although we helped you partly to repay your kindness, but more importantly, it is for Halogen. Halogen is a very filial child. If we are still here, he will never leave with you. Remember my request, take Halogen to the Yangon mainland. I hope that my only child can see the land of the Yangon mainland and experience the life there. Only when we are all dead can he leave without any worries. Annie only has one request. Help us take good care of Halogen and let him become a dwarf hero like his ancestors. Lotta's last words. After reading this, Nian Bing understood everything. Lotta's voice and smile kept flashing in front of his eyes. She chose to sacrifice herself to help him forge the divine swords, and at the same time, to help her child. Yes, if Si Luan continued to stay here, then the dwarves on the godly mainland would definitely not be able to escape the crisis of extinction after a few years. Only by leaving here could Si Luan have a better chance of survival. What a great mother's love. Nian Bing's eyes became blurry again, and tears fell on the stone floor. After a long time, Nian Bing slowly raised his head and looked at Halogen, who was also crying, "Do you hate me?" Yes, if I didn't come, Annie Lotta wouldn't have made this decision. If I didn't come, your family would still be living well together. All of this happened because of me, so you should hate me. From a certain point of view, I am your mother's murderer. Do it. Use your axe to chop me, and I won't fight back. He looked at Halogen calmly. Halogen looked at Nian Bing in a daze. Should I kill you? Before my mother died, she told me not to hate you, but to be grateful to you. If it wasn't for you, the dwarves here would have been destroyed, and you gave us hope. But my mother is dead, my family is all dead, and I am the only one left. What should I do? What should I do? Tell me. Nian Bing took 2 steps forward. He hugged Halogen's broad shoulders. Auntie Lotta died for me, and, at the same time, she died for you. She hoped that you could have a new life, and that you could become a hero like your ancestors. Auntie Lotta and the others are already old, and they can't afford to run around, so it's hard for them to do anything for the dwarves, but you are different. You shoulder the burden of the dwarves' revival. If you want, Nian Bing's life is yours at any time, but now I can't let you kill me, because I must fulfill Auntie Lotta's wish and take you to the Yangon continent. That way, I won't be ashamed of Auntie Lotta's distress. Maybe you think that your family is dead, but from another point of view, they have obtained immortality in the 6 divine knives. The spiritual power was divided into 6 parts and floated out, respectively merging into the 6 divine knives on the stone table. The light flickered, and the 6 divine knives floated up at the same time. At the same time, 6 figures of different colors appeared separately, each holding a divine knife in their hands. Halogen's body trembled, and he looked at the 6 figures in surprise. Although they looked the same as Nian Bing, their aura was so intimate. They were all gently commenting on Halogen. Although they didn't speak, they seemed to be encouraging him. My current strength is not enough to awaken their souls in the knives, but I firmly believe that one day I will reach that level. At that time, what kind of you do you want Auntie Lotta to see? Live on strong and make yourself stronger. That's what you should do, and not be immersed in sorrow. Although Nian Bing was persuading Halogen, he couldn't stop his tears. The aura of the people behind him gradually stabilized. Silent, he looked at the 6 figures, feeling the intimate and gentle aura, and his gaze gradually softened. Mom, I won't let you down. I understand what you mean. I will leave here with Nian Bing. We are brothers, not enemies. He brings us hope. Turning around, Halogen looked at Nian Bing, and Nian Bing, whose face was full of tears, was also looking at him. The grudge between the 2 brothers disappeared under the witness of the 6 shadow puppets. The 2 figures, one tall and one short, hugged each other and cried loudly. The grief in his heart was fully released, and Halogen's heart gradually calmed down. The crying stopped, and he looked at Nian Bing with a complicated expression with some shame. I'm sorry, my brother. I was too impulsive before. I didn't hurt you, did I? Looking at you, your magic seems to have recovered, and the scales on your body have disappeared, but why can't I feel the aura of life? Nian Bing didn't tell Halogen everything. Some things were better if he didn't know. He simply told Halogen that he had obtained the Tianxiang fruit and was preparing to go to the domain of life to find Cao in order to truly recover his life force. Hearing Nian Bing's words, Halogen forced a smile and said, Brother, then I'll congratulate you first. My mom said to let me go back to the Yangon continent with you. Should I go with you now, or wait for you? Nian Bing thought for a moment and said, You should wait for me here. When my life force recovers, I'll immediately come back to find you and take you back with me. Because of that kiss, as well as Cao's strange temper, he really wasn't sure whether Cao would hurt Halogen or not. He was afraid that if he wanted to recover his life force, he would have to face some difficulties from Cao. Therefore, he decided to let Halogen stay here first. Halogen nodded and looked at the 6 blades on the table with emotion. He said, Then you go. I'll wait for you here. Take them with you. After my mother and the elders condensed them, these 6 blades have become super divine tools. Not only can the power of the materials of the blades be maximized, but they have also undergone some special craftsmanship of the dwarves. When you use them, you will feel the difference. The power of a super divine tool is enormous. I hope you can preserve them well. In the soul of the blades, there are shadows of my mother and the others. Looking at Halogen's somewhat red eyes, Nian Bing sighed in his heart. He lowered his head and said, "If I knew that Aunt Lotta and the others had decided to refine the blades like this, I wouldn't have agreed." Halogen, I can understand how you feel now. If it was me, I'm afraid I would be even worse than you. However, you're not alone now. You are my brother, and my parents are your parents. Halogen sighed and said, "Mother is also doing this for the future of the dwarves. In fact, I understand everything in my heart, but it is very difficult to accept this fact. You should quickly go find the God of Life and try to recover your life force as soon as possible. We can continue our future operations. I will always be here waiting for you, and make preparations to go to the Yangon continent. Rest assured, I won't do anything foolish again. Mother's sacrifice brought me light, and I will definitely become the true hero of the dwarves." At this time, Nian Bing suddenly felt that Halogen seemed to have grown up a lot. Halogen sent Nian Bing all the way to the foot of the Black Mountain before returning. Nian Bing was afraid that the demon-devouring blades would seek revenge on Halogen. Originally, he wanted to leave the 5 dark creatures in the demon-devouring blade, but Halogen told him that, as long as he was in the cave of the Black Mountain, not to mention the demon-devouring blades, even if there were twice as many of them, they would not be able to harm him. Therefore, he rejected Nian Bing's good intentions. After bidding farewell to Halogen, Nian Bing simply identified the direction, and under the effect of wind magic, quickly headed toward Kao's life domain. In Nian Bing's heart, he felt closer to Amaterasu. Although he always felt that the person's heart was as dark as her own energy, Tianxian's help to him in all aspects was real. Compared to the cold and indifferent Cao, he felt much better. The fluctuating white fog gradually appeared in front of him. If he hadn't really been inside, no one would have imagined that this thick layer of fog separated 2 completely different worlds. He floated outside the white fog. Nian Bing stopped and shouted loudly, "Cao, I'm back. Please open the passage." Nian Bing stopped after calling out to him. He knew what was going on. With Cao's ability, he might have already sensed his breath, not to mention that her other side was Amaterasu. She should know when he would return. So he waited. But after the time it took to eat a meal, the white fog in front of him was still the same. There was not the slightest change. Nian Bing couldn't help but be a little stunned. Was Cao not letting him in because she was angry with him? But, according to Amaterasu's words, he still had some value to them. She shouldn't be so harsh to him. Just as Nian Bing was puzzled, a gentle voice suddenly appeared behind him. "Do you know Cao?" This voice sounded very comfortable, as if there was a warm feeling flowing in his chest. Nian Bing was shocked. Given his spiritual power, he hadn't even noticed that someone had sneaked up behind him. This meant that this person's strength was too terrifying. He didn't turn around immediately. Instead, he charged forward and only turned around when he was close to the white fog. He saw a man of medium build standing 3 meters behind where he had been standing. The man was smiling at him. This person was wearing a white robe without any other decorations. His crystal silver hair draped over his shoulders. The color of his eyes was very strange. They were purple. It was a kind of deep purple, kind of soft purple. Suddenly looking at him, Nian Bing only felt a kind of dizziness in his brain, as if he was going to fall asleep immediately. The white-robed man's appearance was very handsome. It was a kind of gentle beauty. His white skin was almost flawless. But Nian Bing found that even though he used his Tianyan acupoint, he couldn't really feel the energy fluctuations around this person's body. An expert, an unfathomable expert. This was Nian Bing's evaluation of the person in front of him. Nian Bing was sizing up the other party, and the other party was also sizing him up. When he saw that Nian Bing returned to normal after looking at him, his eyes couldn't help but flash with a faint trace of surprise. "You still haven't answered my question." The silver-haired, purple-eyed man was still looking at Nian Bing with a smile. His gentle temperament Ling Nian Bing couldn't help but have a good impression of him. "Yes, I came here to look for the God of Life, Cao, but she didn't give me a reply. May I ask, who are you?" The white-robed man smiled and said, My name is Othi King. I'm very happy to meet you. He took a step forward lightly. Without any energy fluctuations or feeling of air, he had already arrived beside Nianbing. His face revealed a trace of apology. I'm sorry. Cao didn't want to see you. I'm afraid it's because of my arrival. I also came here to look for her. Since you also want to see her, how about I bring you in? Nianbing's heart trembled slightly. She didn't say anything, nor did she ask any questions. She only nodded in silence. Othi King smiled. Facing the white fog outside the domain of life, he raised his right hand. The space around his finger twisted slightly. His hand looked like a woman's hand, pure white and flawless. With a slight twist, he slowly inserted his hand into the white fog in front of him. The white fog was originally constantly fluctuating, but when Othi King's hand inserted into it, the white fog's fluctuations instantly stopped. Othi King smiled and said, "Wait a while before you move." As he spoke, he gently blew a breath of air into the white fog. With a puff, a circle of ripples spread out from the center of the white fog. The fog faintly twisted and spread to the surroundings, forming a passageway that led to the inside of the domain of life. Othi King turned around and smiled at Nianbing, saying, "Let's go, we can go in now. I just don't know if Cao will welcome us." Nianbing looked at Othi King in front of her. He suddenly smiled. "Controlling the order of everything, you must be the god of order." Othi King looked at Nianbing, said in surprise, "Looks like you know a lot of things. No wonder you came here to look for Cao. But your aura seems to be the kind that Cao hates the most. After you go in, I won't be able to protect you. Everything will depend on you. I don't know when a powerful existence like you appeared among the gods. It looks like I really should pay attention to the order of this continent." He said that she was powerful. Nianbing's heart skipped a beat as she understood something. The reason why Othi King said that she was powerful was probably because of her spiritual energy. The moment she looked at him, he should have already tested her. As to what kind of test it was, she didn't know. But from her spiritual energy, he could see some of her strength, which was why he said that. At that moment, she didn't explain further. She followed behind Othi King and walked into Cao's domain of life. Once again, they passed through the white fog. With every step they took, Nianbing could clearly feel that the aura of life in the surrounding air had become denser. This feeling was even more uncomfortable than the last time, so she couldn't help but use her spiritual energy. A rainbow light surrounded her body, completely isolating her aura from the outside world. Only then did she share the surging aura of life, which made her feel much more comfortable. Othi King didn't walk very fast, just like an ordinary person. Every movement of his revealed some elegance, just like a noble gentleman. The domain of life once again appeared in front of her eyes. Ling Nianbing was filled with a desire for life. Chapter 180. Although the aura of death was equally strong, he was more willing to choose the aura of life. That lively and passionate life force was what he wanted the most. Othi King stopped after passing through the white fog. He did not set foot on the plants in front of him. He stared at the giant tree in the middle of the lake and smiled. He said calmly, "An old friend has come to visit. I hope Miss Cao is not annoyed." Cao's cold voice came from the treehouse. "When have you ever not annoyed me?" Ripples suddenly appeared on the originally calm and clear lake. A wave surged up from under the tree. Cao, dressed in a long green dress, floated on the surface of the lake under the contrast of the aura of life. She appeared by the side of the lake under the wave and silently floated there. Her eyes were completely focused on OD, as if she didn't notice Nianbing's appearance. Nianbing did not say anything. He stood behind Othi King. He was very clear about the difference in strength between him and these true gods. A smart person would not do anything stupid. Othi King looked at Cao. His eyes revealed a warm light. He said, "Miss Cao." Othi King came here because he suddenly sensed Miss Tianxiang. "Perhaps you can give me an explanation." Cao said coldly, "Tianxiang, and I will abide by our agreement. She just left Green Mountain temporarily because of her new training." "Why? Do you have any questions?" The smile on Othi King's face did not disappear. "I don't have any questions. It's just that the continent of gods has not been peaceful recently." Miss Tianxiang's aura suddenly disappeared. This made Othi King a little worried. Cao said indifferently, "Then you can go back. Within 3 days, Tian Xiang will naturally appear. You must have heard about Meordis's bottle of sealing from those true gods. Do you want to interfere again?" Othi King said, "No, of course not. That is the problem of humans. It has little to do with us, as long as what we don't want doesn't happen. What does everything else have to do with me?" Cao looked at Othi King's purple eyes. "Your abilities seem to have improved quite a bit. This body should have completely fused with you. If you're here today to demonstrate to me, you can give it a try." As she spoke, she slowly raised her right hand, and tiny green dots of light gathered at her fingertips. Although the smile on Othi King's face was still there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. A distorted light flickered around him. "Actually, the battle between us doesn't have much meaning. Isn't that right?" Cao said coldly. "If you really think that way, then everything is already over. You came here alone. Aren't you afraid that I'll make you stay? I think I still have the ability." Othi King's expression changed slightly. "I just want to ask about Miss Tian Xiang. After all, we're old friends. If Miss Tian Xiang has any difficulties, I'm happy to help." Cao snorted coldly. She said, "Help? You're here to spy on us, aren't you? Do you think we have to make the same choice as you to continue to fight against you?" The green light completely dyed her hand green. Cao's body that was floating in the air suddenly swayed slightly. A faint black shadow appeared behind her without any warning. This black shadow didn't emit any aura, but the clear image made Ling Nianbing jump in fright. That was clearly Tian Xiang. This time, the smile on Othi King's face finally disappeared. His upper body leaned forward slightly. "In that case, let's meet again next time. I hope that this time, the two ladies will still be the same. Oh, right, this little brother is also here to look for you. I don't know what he wants. Othi King won't delay the two of you any longer." Just as he finished speaking, Nian Bing suddenly felt her body tremble. She suddenly left her original position and stood in front of Othi King. At the same time, the blood in her body suddenly stopped flowing. After a moment of stagnation, it broke free from Nian Bing's control and started flowing in the opposite direction. Even her spiritual power was imprisoned in an instant. With a muffled groan, a mouthful of black blood spurted out from Nian Bing's mouth. "You dare!" Cao was furious. The green figure and the black shadow behind him appeared in front of Nian Bing in the blink of an eye. Tian Xiang's shadow instantly slapped out a palm and imprinted it on Nian Bing's chest. The black blood spurting out from his mouth instantly disappeared. Cao directly attacked Othi King, who was behind Nian Bing. At this moment, Othi King was even more shocked than the furious Cao. When he broke through Nian Bing's spiritual power with his palm, he suddenly felt a strange fluctuation. Immediately after, 7 light shadows appeared behind Nian Bing almost simultaneously. Blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black lights flashed and directly cut off his attack on Nian Bing. Especially the black shadow. Its black blade carried a sharp death aura and directly attacked his body. He was naturally not afraid of this kind of programmed attack, but he was afraid of Cao, who was chasing after him. No matter how conceited he was, he would never dare to attack together with Cao and Tian Xiang at the same time. He was afraid of being entangled by the black shadow. The distorted light instantly expanded, and the black light that was attacking him suddenly changed direction. The white fog behind him fluctuated violently, and his figure disappeared. At this moment, the space was completely distorted and forcefully blocked Cao's pursuit. Cao's eyes shone with a cold light. A small green arrow floated out from her palm and disappeared into the white fog. Othi King's voice came from outside. "The green mountains do not change, and the green water flows forever. The next time we meet, it will be the time for us to decide the victor. I never thought that I would make a mistake. It turns out that you are just an ordinary demigod. Ha, I'm. The last thing that came was a muffled groan. The distorted space in the life domain disappeared, but Othi King's groan became so weak that it was almost indiscernible. The reverse blood flow stopped again and should have returned to normal in the next moment. If Nian Bing's body was not like that of an ordinary person, He was afraid that this reverse blood flow would have taken his life. He spat out another mouthful of blood and used his spiritual power to control his blood flow again. Only then did he feel a little better. The 7 light shadows did not need to be controlled at all. They had already surrounded him in the center. The 7 divine swords pointed at his body at the same time. 7 types of pure magic entered his body and calmed his injured body. The faint 7-colored light merged with his spiritual power and formed a domain with a diameter of 3 meters. The 7-colored light shone brightly and brought some interesting fluctuations to this domain that was full of life energy. A super divine tool and a divine tool were 2 completely different concepts. The 7 types of extremely pure magic elements were completely absorbed and transformed by the 7 divine swords. Although there were no magic elements in this life domain, they could still transfer the magic elements they stored into Nian Bing's body. This made his magic more active and combined with his spiritual power to resolve the discomfort in his body. Tianxiang's shadow disappeared. Cao looked coldly at the black blood that Nian Bing spat out on the plant. The plant had already withered under the influence of the black blood that carried the aura of death. The area around Nian Bing was also turned into flat ground because of the 7 types of magic elements. Even the aura of life was blocked outside by the 7-colored light. Even the true god, Cao's domain, could not hurt Nian Bing at all under the effect of the 7 super divine tools. Cao raised his head. His gaze towards Nian Bing became a little complicated, but it quickly returned to normal. Nian Bing let out a long breath and recovered. The 7-colored light dimmed at the same time. It did not enter the space ring, but directly entered his body. Nian Bing, who had regained consciousness, could not help but feel a little scared. When Othi King attacked him, the 7 super divine tools in his body neutralized half of the attack. Otherwise, the reverse flow of his blood would have instantly reached a rapid speed. No matter how strong his body was, he would only have the fate of exploding and dying. Nian Bing thought of Lada from the dwarf clan. He could not help but sigh secretly. "Aunt Lada, you are the ones who saved me." After regaining consciousness, Nian Bing immediately saw Cao's unfriendly gaze. He could not help but feel a little embarrassed. "Sorry, I did not mean to destroy your domain." Cao snorted coldly. "What a god of order. They are getting bolder and bolder. They actually dare to come into my domain and attack. However, you also surprised me. You were able to come out unscathed from Othi King's attack. Other than Tianxiang and me, you're the first one. Although you relied on external objects, Tianxiang did not misjudge you." Nian Bing said, "He really is the god of order, Othi King. His ability is very strange. Why does he seem to be able to control my body? He can even control my blood." Cao said, "Among the 3 of them, Othi King is the strongest. Do you think he is called the god of order for nothing? His strongest ability is to control everything. You can also understand that he is the strongest spatial magician in the world. There is nothing he cannot control. He paid so much attention to you because of your spiritual power. That is why he suddenly attacked you before he left. If it were not for your swords, I am afraid you would already be dead. If it was just me alone, I'm not sure I could defeat him. The biggest characteristic of his ability is the change. I'm also unable to predict the way he will attack in advance. However, what you saw was not the complete state of the God of Order. As the strongest of the 3 guys, he is also the most insidious. Only when he is together with the God of Time can he become the strongest. If it were not for Tianxiang and I having some special abilities, I am afraid we would have been defeated by the 3 of them last time." This was the first time that Cao and Nian Bing spoke so much. Ling Nian Bing could not help but feel a little strange. The current Cao seemed to be much more humane and not as unreasonable as before. After thinking about it, Nian Bing said, "He came here to look for you probably because the death aura in Death Waterfall suddenly weakened. However, since he broke the rules of the competition that only happens once in 1,000 years, he should be very confident in his own strength. Cao, aren't you afraid that the 3 of them will attack you together? It is better to prepare early." Othi King's attack made Nian Bing trust Cao and Tian Xiang more. Behind the surface gentleness and elegance were despicable actions. This made Nian Bing even more determined to help Cao and Tian Xiang get through this difficult time. Of course, the prerequisite was that Cao was willing to help him recover his life force. Cao shook his head and said, "No, they won't come again, at least not for the time being. Do you think that Tian Xiang and I are so easy to bully? If that was the case, we would have died long ago." After tens of thousands of years of survival, the three of them have become very selfish. Although they are confident that they can defeat the two of us, if they want to kill us, then at least two of the three of them will be buried with us. This is a situation that they definitely do not want to see, so before they have absolute confidence, they will still abide by the oath of the battle that only happens once in 1,000 years. Tian Xiang and I are one, so our situation is different. Even if Tian Xiang and I fight fiercely, we are still one person. Do you know why Othi King came to find me? Because he is afraid. All three of them are afraid. Nian Bing was stunned and said, "Afraid? What are they afraid of?" It is hard for him to understand that as one of the strongest people in the world, the God of Order is also afraid of something. A rare smile appeared on Cao's ordinary face, because he is afraid that Tian Xiang and I will integrate into one. As early as when the five of us were created, Tian Xiang and I were one level higher than the three of them. The reason why we have always been in a balanced state is that when Tian Xiang and I were created, there was a problem. It can be said that the two of us are only half-finished products. That is why there is a split personality and a split ability. Once we turn from half-finished products into finished products, everything will be completely integrated. Then, it will be the time of destruction for the three of them. That is why they have always been afraid. Nian Bing looked at Cao in surprise and said, "Then after cultivating for so many years, you and Tian Xiang have never thought of a way to integrate into one? There has to be a way." Cao shook his head with a wry smile and said, "We have thought of all kinds of possibilities and have experimented countless times, but we have never succeeded. We are two absolute extremes. How can it be easy to integrate into one? A complete fusion was almost impossible to achieve. At most, we can only achieve a half-integrated state. Only in that state can we compete with the three of them." Nian Bing's eyes lit up and said, "Maybe I can provide you with some help. In the human world, I am a magician with the same origin of ice and fire. Ice and fire are also two extremes, but I've been able to integrate them with my continuous cultivation. In my understanding, no matter what kind of energy in the world, there is something in common. As long as we can find the common point, it is not impossible to integrate. Oh, right, there's also the frequency. At a specific frequency, with a common point as the core, the integration is very likely to be completed." After hearing Nian Bing's words, Cao fell into contemplation. After a long time, she suddenly flashed in front of Nian Bing and grabbed his right hand. A burst of life force forcibly entered Nian Bing's body of death, causing him to almost cry out in pain. However, Nian Bing knew that Cao wanted to feel the mystery of the fusion of ice and fire. He forcibly suppressed the discomfort in his body with his spiritual power and opened up everything in his body to let her feel it. The fusion of ice and fire had been completed. The blue and red light in Nian Bing's body fused together, while the other 5 magic elements revolved around him. Feeling the fusion of magic power from Nian Bing, Cao's eyes became brighter and brighter. Obviously, she had figured out something. Although she was not sure, Nian Bing had provided her with a new idea. What is the common point of life and death? Letting go of his hand, Cao retreated to the side. She was constantly pondering. Nian Bing breathed a sigh of relief. Cao's attack was very measured. Her control of life force had reached a miraculous level. It did not cause any harm to him. Cao was thinking, and he was also thinking. Nian Bing was a person who was good at thinking. Whether it was practicing cooking or magic, he would often spend a long time thinking. Those special magic arrays were made for him to use by unraveling the mysteries of those mysteries through constant contemplation. While thinking, he muttered, "Life and death are polar opposites. What do they have in common?" While thinking, Time often passed very quickly. Everything in the domain of life was made up of Kao's energy, so he could not feel the passage of time at all. After an unknown amount of time, Kao shook her head in disappointment. No, it still doesn't work. There is no common point at all. You are ice and fire. From a certain point of view, they are both magic energy. Moreover, they are both based on magic elements and have the aura of life. Ice is cold, stable, and calm life, while fire is intense, passionate, and scorching life. Life and the origin energy are their common points. But life and death are not the same. From the day the world was born, these two types of energy have been in opposition. This opposition is both absolute and relative, no matter from which point of view. They belong to a huge category, and each is the opposite of the other. How can you find a common point? No, it still doesn't work. I can understand the frequency that you're talking about. My half-fusion with the heavenly fragrance and the earthly fragrance is built on the basis of frequency. However, your method of fusing ice and fire from the same origin and using common points is not suitable for us. After saying this, she shook her head in disappointment. Hearing Kao's words, Nianbing also woke up from her thoughts. What Kao thought of, she also thought of it. Indeed, as Kao said, the opposition between life and death and the opposition between magic elements were completely different. They did not belong to the same level at all. She also could not think of a good way. Kao, don't be discouraged. Since the person who created you is likely to become the strongest god, then there must be a way. You are right. It is really difficult to reach that level, but I always have a feeling that the two types of energy, life and death, will definitely be able to fuse in a special aura. Kao sighed and said, in your understanding, maybe we still have a long time, but for us who have lived for 50,000 years, there's not much time left. Before the next battle, if we can't think of a way, the defeat of the battle with the three of them will be ours. Moreover, while we are thinking of a way to improve, they're also constantly working hard. Maybe they can come up with a way to completely destroy us without being destroyed. Tianxiang and I don't care much about life, but in our subconscious, defeating them is our biggest goal. Looking at Kao's lonely look, Nianbing suddenly felt a burst of excitement in his heart. He stepped forward and pulled her and said, Kao, I will definitely help you. I don't know who is right and who is wrong between you, but you help me to regain my life. I will definitely repay this kindness. As the saying goes, 2 heads are short, but 3 heads are long. I think we will definitely have a way, right? Holding the hand full of life, Nianbing's body was very uncomfortable, but his heart was very comfortable. After coming to the godly mainland, he had this kind of feeling for the first time. Although he knew that in terms of strength, he was far inferior to Kao and Tianxiang, but the impulse in his heart was very strong. Especially when he saw Kao's dull eyes had a little more joy, he was even more sure that his decision was right. Kao gently broke away from Nianbing's hand, and his face was a little more red. Thank you. I don't know why, but I suddenly became very confident. Maybe you are right. There will always be a way. You have been in the godly mainland for some time. Let's help you restore your vitality first. Then I will let the dragon god send you and that dwarf back to the Yangon continent. Nianbing said with some surprise, You also know about halogen? Kao smiled indifferently and said, As long as I want to know, what else do I not know? The dwarves are very bold. The reason why I was willing to help them was that I appreciated the Lost Empire more. Nothing is absolute. Once you go back, you could do whatever you want. Only by completely opening up your heart can you reach our level. Nianbing, before helping you restore your vitality, can I ask you to do something? She actually used a questioning tone. Nianbing's heart warmed. He knew that Kao had already regarded him as a friend, not an object to be used. He suddenly discovered that the cold and detached upper body was no longer as hateful as before. Compared to Tianxiang, she was much more sincere. Although it was not obvious, he could clearly feel it. What request? Tell me, is it the 100 flowers due? I also want to try it. Of course, I need your help. Making the 100 flowers due is Master Zhaji's wish, and it is also his wish. Kao shook her head, and 2 more red clouds appeared on her face. You are now dead, and all the flowers here have the aura of life. I am afraid that making the 100 flowers do now will not achieve the best effect. It is not too late to make it after you restore your vitality. What I want you to make is the kind of thing you make for the dwarves called rice. It looks very delicious. I used to follow you into their cave with my divine sense, and the dwarves seemed very happy to see the food you made. Tianxiang and I have been eating since the day we were born. What we eat is only energy and the most mundane food. After waking up from a deep sleep, we stayed together on this god's land. Although we are called gods, our bodies are still human bodies, and we have not lost our sense of taste. So, I think I want to eat what you make. Looking at Cao's somewhat shy appearance, Nian Bing could not help but smile. This is too simple. You know, I have much more confidence in my cooking skills than in magic. Even if you are all gods on this god's land, when it comes to cooking, I am afraid that no one can compare with me. Oh no, I don't have any more ingredients for cooking. After cooking for the dwarves, I left all the materials to them. I can't do anything without the materials. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Looking at Cao with some regret, Nian Bing really wanted to satisfy her wish. Moreover, she had not cooked well for a long time. Her desire for cooking was no less than her desire to improve her strength. Cao chuckled. She said, "Have you forgotten? I'm a god. After you left the dwarves, I got all the materials you left behind." Nian Bing waved his green sleeves, and all sorts of materials appeared in front of him. These materials had been preserved for a long time, so they weren't that fresh. However, under the effect of Kahl's surging life force, they were able to withstand the pressure. They were all as new as before. Nian Bing looked at Cao in a daze. She suddenly found that Cao's ordinary face looked beautiful in a different way. "Cao, I prefer your human-like appearance. It's a pity that Tianxiang can't appear with you. Otherwise, I'll let you taste what I cooked together." While speaking, she released all her cooking utensils from the space ring. Cao smiled and said, "How can I not taste it? Although the body is now under my control, her soul still exists. She can also feel what I eat. Hurry up and cook. We have been eating together. Tianxiang's soul wants me to thank you. Thank you for remembering her." Nian Bing smiled and said, "How can I not remember? She left a deep impression on me." Speaking of this, she couldn't help but remember the deep kiss with Cao and Tianxiang, and her face couldn't help but blush. What kind of person was Cao? How could he not see the thoughts in Nian Bing's heart? She spat softly and said, "Don't have any bad thoughts. Hurry up and cook. I'm looking forward to seeing what human culinary skills can make." Thinking of the legendary food that the dwarves said, I'm very interested. Didn't Tianxiang tell you that, in fact, what we want most is to be able to live the life of an ordinary person? Nian Bing nodded and thought for a moment. Her left hand pointed to the ground, and the earth that had been stirred up by the magic elements suddenly surged out of the ground. A great melody of awakening appeared in Nian Bing's hand. The earth element stored in the longevity stone continuously seeped into the ground, fusing with the soil. Under the control of Nian Bing's spiritual power, it gradually changed its shape. After a while, an earth-cast stove and a kitchen table appeared in front of her. Looking at the stove and the kitchen table in front of her, Nian Bing's eyes clearly changed. It was a look of extreme desire, calm and full of emotions. She turned her wrist, and the longevity knife returned to her body. She raised her head and said to Cao, "There are only ordinary ingredients here. I'll make some simple food for you. If I have the opportunity to go to Yangon in the future, I'll definitely make something better for you to taste." My cooking mainly consists of 5 main methods: grilling, frying, stir-frying, and roasting, and some other auxiliary methods. Today, I'll make 5 dishes for you to taste. I haven't cooked for a long time, and in order to prevent the death aura on my body from affecting the ingredients, I'll make some simple dishes that I'm good at. With a wave of her left hand, a wind rose, and a piece of pork fell in front of Nian Bing. Her hand was wrapped in her spiritual power, and not a trace of death aura leaked out. Looking at the pork in front of her, Nian Bing's eyes suddenly became focused. She raised her right hand, and the wind rose. The proud heaven blade floated out of her body and landed in her palm. She pinched the pork with her left hand, and the green light in her right hand gently cut the pork. Immediately, the skin on the edge of the pork was separated from the meat. Nian Bing skillfully pinched the separated pork skin, and the proud heaven blade followed the edge of the pork, completely separating the meat from the skin. She flipped the proud heaven blade in her hand and put the pork aside. Her left hand had already laid the pork skin flat on the chopping board. Although this process sounded cumbersome, it only took a few blinks of an eye. A snowfish was taken out of the ingredients by Nian Bing and landed on the chopping board. Although the snowfish was already dead, under the effect of Cow's life aura, it was as if it had just died. The snowfish was picked up into the air and wrapped in the wind. This fat, tender, and scaleless fish was finished in a short while. The head, tail, and internal organs were removed, leaving only the fat fish body. With a bang, the snowfish fell and landed right on the pork skin. Nian Bing had already changed the blade in his hand, and a blue light with a cold aura appeared in his hand. After simply observing the snowfish in front of him, Nian Bing's right hand suddenly turned into an illusion, and the blade disappeared as well. Only the crisp sound of slapping could be heard in the air. The improvement of his body's ability had greatly enhanced Nian Bing's functions in all aspects. Although he had not used these treasured blades to cook for many days, his movements were not rusty at all. The irregular but picturesque blue blade light appeared dense and rhythmic. He did not use the blade to cut the snowfish, but used the back of the blade to continuously hit the snowfish's body. Cow stood in front of Nian Bing. She was indeed powerful, but when it came to cooking, she was like a rolling pin, completely clueless. Looking at the morning dew blade in Nian Bing's hand, and the back of the blade continuously hitting the snowfish's back, gradually turning the snowfish into fish paste, she widened her eyes, and her concentration was no less than Nian Bing's. It was as if she was afraid that she would miss any of his movements. With a crisp sound, the snowfish finally completely turned into fish paste, but the morning dew blade did not have a trace of fish meat on it. The cold light disappeared. Looking at the fish paste in front of him and the pig skin in front of him, Nian Bing smiled and said, "It seems that my cooking skills have not deteriorated." The space ring lit up with a silver light, and a small cloth bag appeared on the kitchen table. Nian Bing stroked his right hand and picked out a medium-sized ghost condor from the cloth bag. With a shake of his wrist, a faint blue light jumped about in Nian Bing's hand like a tiny flame. Chapter 181. His right hand stroked the fish meat with that faint blue light. The ghost eagle slowly moved his right hand and kept drilling in and out of the snowfish. Some shiny things were picked out in the faint blue light. They were the bones and tendons of the snowfish. After a while, his right hand took out the proud heaven blade. He wiped the surface of the pig skin and put the fish meat into the bowl. A faint blue light appeared in his hand, and the big bowl was suddenly covered with a layer of frost. The iron pot was placed on the stove. The ice element condensed in the pot, and the fire element was roasting under the pot. The pot of water was almost boiling in a few breaths. Nian Bing's hands flashed with the light of ice and fire respectively. He was very familiar with the operation. The pig skin was put into the water and kept boiling in the boiling water. The flame in Nian Bing's hand turned from red to blue, and the temperature kept rising. Under his deliberate control, the pig skin was cooked in a while. The proud heaven blade reached into the pot, and in the light stirring, the wind broke the water, and the pig skin was stirred into pieces. He didn't care about the iron pot anymore, and put on the stove to dry. He took the prawns from the ingredients and made them into velvets. Every movement of his was like moving clouds and flowing water. It was unusually harmonious and looked very comfortable. There were no flaws. Although he had secretly observed Nian Bing's cooking process, Cao couldn't see what Nian Bing was going to do now. He just watched in surprise. Until now, she was still attracted by the injured man's feet. Her appetite was no different from ordinary people, and the taste of the boiled pig skin didn't arouse her. When the prawns were done, the pig skin soup on the side had cooled down a little. Nian Bing's hand quickly changed a few small bottles and added a little seasoning into the soup and stirred evenly. At the same time, he put the prawns into a bowl. It was also frozen for later use. The carrots and spinach appeared in Yin Bing's hands at the same time. He paused for a moment and took out the fish paste that he had prepared earlier. He divided it into 3 equal portions and placed it in 3 bowls. The spinach and carrots were washed clean under the effect of the ice water. This time, Yin Bing displayed her top-notch knife speed in front of Cao. The spinach was thrown into the air and was immediately swept up by the green light, as if a small tornado had surrounded it. If it weren't for Cao's extremely strong eyesight, he wouldn't have been able to see what she had done. The spinach was swept up by the green light and gradually turned into extremely small fragments. What was strange was that the juice in the spinach did not spill out at all. It was completely engulfed by the blade light. When the green light disappeared, the spinach had already entered one of the 3 bowls of fish paste. The same thing happened with carrots. The carrot powder went into the other bowl with the fresh red juice. Yin Bing took the pork that he had placed aside earlier. He used the proud heaven blade to cut off a small piece and threw the pork into the air. The wind element wrapped around the pork, preventing it from falling. At the same time, a flame emerged from his left hand. While roasting the pork in the air, Yin Bing occasionally waved the proud heaven blade in his hand, leaving a pattern on the pork. The roasted meat finally gave off a fragrance. In addition to the various seasonings that Yin Bing continuously sprinkled, the fragrance gradually became more and more enticing. Cao had always been very patient, but at this time, he felt somewhat impatient. Looking at the pork rolling in the air, being roasted in the constantly changing red and blue flames, he quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He thought to himself, "This thing looks much more delicious than flowers." Yin Bing's dish was extremely complicated to make. Everything that was done now was just the foundation. A small piece of pork didn't need too much time to roast. When the pork reached a level that Yin Bing was satisfied with, his movements changed. The proud heaven blade created countless wind blades that wrapped around the pork. Just like the spinach and carrots before, the pork was turned into minced meat. However, this time, he didn't put the minced meat into the fish paste. Instead, he took out a separate bowl and put it there. After finishing all this, Yin Bing smiled at Cao and said, "The preparation work is done. Bear with it for a while, it will be ready soon." As he said that, his left hand touched the iron pot at the side. The pigskin soup that had already become warm turned into pigskin jelly under the gradual strengthening of the ice element. Yin Bing picked up the iron pot and poured out the pigskin jelly. Under the effect of the proud heaven blade, the pigskin jelly was cut into small pieces and placed to the side. Once again, clear water was added to the iron pot. A red flame rose from the stove under the effect of Yin Bing's magic, slowly heating up the iron pot. At this time, Yin Bing's movements became faster. He first added several different seasonings into the 3 bowls of fish paste. Then he quickly stirred. The fish paste with spinach and carrots turned red and green respectively. Together with the other bowl of white fish paste, it formed a sparkling and translucent tricolor. Yin Bing sheathed his saber, and his hands began to move magically. When the fish paste was in Yin Bing's hands, it was immediately flattened under the effect of the ice element and wind element. Yin Bing added minced pork into the green fish paste, then kneaded it into a round green fish ball and placed it into the heating iron pot. Next, he used the red fish paste to flatten it and added the shrimp paste to make a red ball. Finally, he added a piece of sliced pig skin jelly into the sole fish paste and placed it into the pot. His movements were extremely fast. Cao saw the red, green, and white fish balls alternately fall into the pot. After a while, the various seasonings that Yin Bing had prepared disappeared. Just when all the ingredients had turned into fish balls, the clear water in the pot finally boiled. Yin Bing's expression became focused. His upper body leaned forward, and his right hand took a pair of chopsticks. He inserted them into the center of the water and began to gently stir in the pot. In the boiling clear water, the 3 colors of red, green, and white sparkling fish balls shone with the colors of red, green, and white. With the chopsticks as the center, they quickly circled around. It was the mystic jade hand that could break water and protect face. Although Nian Bing's mystic jade hand wasn't the real deal, its effects weren't inferior at all. At the same time, his other hand carried the aura of the fire element as he pressed it against the side of the pot. He continuously changed the intensity of the flames, causing the clear water in the pot to gradually change. Finally, when the three colors of the fish balls became more sparkling, Nian Bing waved his hands repeatedly. Red soul vinegar and various seasonings were added into the pot. In addition, he had already prepared the highest grade chicken broth. A pot of steaming hot meatball soup was ready. The fresh fragrance assailed his nostrils. Cao was absent-minded for a while. He subconsciously walked to the pot and looked at Nian Bing with longing eyes as he poured the meatball soup into a large bowl. He muttered, "Can we eat now?" Nian Bing smiled slightly. He pushed the large bowl in front of Cao. He said, "Miss Cao, please taste my ice and fire glass pearl." The biggest feature of this dish is the combination of various seasonings. There is nothing special in terms of culinary skills. As long as a chef is skilled and meticulous, they can make it. However, I am confident that it is very rare to be able to achieve such a high level of heat and use so many seasonings. I think that the taste of this bowl of ice and fire glazed pearl will satisfy you. You eat first. I will make something else for you. This ice and fire glass pearl was a famous dish that Cha Ji taught to Nian Bing. It was also one of Nian Bing's favorite dishes. The taste was very unique, especially the combination of the snow fish paste and the pig meat jelly. When the fish balls were cooked, the pig meat jelly inside would turn into delicious juice. The aroma of the dish was unparalleled. Although Nian Bing made it sound easy, it wasn't easy for a chef to make this dish. At the very least, it wasn't something that everyone could make. It was very rare to see a chef like Nian Bing who could make it so perfect. Cao looked at the big bowl in front of him and then looked at the three pearl-like fish balls in different colors. For a moment, he could not bear to eat. Nian Bing was preparing the next dish. She smiled and said, "Eat quickly. This dish can only be best eaten when it is hot. You can eat slowly and fully experience the various changes in taste. That is the most wonderful feeling. Oh, by the way, be careful when you eat the white fish balls. Don't be scalded by the juice inside." At this moment, he had already forgotten Call's identity. He also forgot that Call's ability didn't allow him to be afraid of heat at all. He was a chef, and Call was a mage's taster. The three delicious fish balls entered Cow's mouth one after another as she chewed and swallowed slowly. The hundreds of changes in taste suddenly opened up her taste buds. The delicious taste made all the pores on Cow's body open. The surrounding plants grew and fluctuated at a high frequency under the effect of her accelerated release of the breath of life. The light in her eyes became a little hazy. Unknowingly, a black figure appeared behind her. Yes, now, she was not the only one eating. At the same time, Amaterasu, who had the breath of death, was eating as well. The 5 dishes were served one by one. Each of them had its own characteristics. Some were fresh, and some were refreshing. It was an eye-opener for Cow. For her, digesting food was a simple matter. When she finished all the food, Nian Bing took a full 2 hours to prepare. "How is it? Is my cooking skills okay?" Nian Bing asked with a smile. She had absolute confidence in her skills. Cow raised her head and looked at Nian Bing with a complicated expression. She whispered, "Do you people in Yangon eat these things every day?" Nian Bing nodded, then shook his head and said, "More accurately speaking, it should be something similar to these. However, it's not easy to taste the delicacies I make. There aren't many chefs like me in the Yangon continent. If you have the chance, go to Yangon. I will get some of the best spices and make you a table of 7 dishes that I am best at. That is what I am best at. My nickname is Ice and Fire Chef. Although I am not the first person to use magic in cooking, I am a pioneer." Cow's face showed a trace of a bitter smile. "Nian Bing, it's over." Nian Bing was stunned. "What? Don't you think my cooking tastes good?" Cow shook her head, and her face showed a trace of a little girl's shyness. "No, I mean, after eating your food, how can I live here in the future? I can't wait to go to Yangon with you now. I don't care about anything and just eat your food every day. How good would that be?" Nian Bing smiled. As a chef, being recognized by diners was the happiest thing. Of course, when you and Tian Xiang finish all the things, I will cook delicious food for you to taste every day. I always keep my word. So, you have to work hard and strive to defeat those 3 guys as soon as possible. Alas, speaking of which, the most regrettable thing for me is that I can't participate in this year's God of Cookery competition. I'm afraid that the results of the God of Cookery competition have already come out. I don't know who won the final championship. It only happens once every 5 years. I can only wait for the next time. Cao smiled and said, "The food you make is simply too delicious. Although I don't really understand the culinary arts you speak of, the taste and the feeling of eating is absolutely enjoyable. It seems that Tian Xiang and I have lived in vain for the past 50,000 years. We actually didn't know that human food could reach such a level. The food you make is mixed with the aura of magic elements. The various energies in the food are completely brought out by your culinary arts, allowing the food to fully display its vitality. This is simply too wonderful. I would rather starve in the future than eat flowers." Her face showed a trace of longing. Nian Bing understood that at this time, Cao was looking forward to the future life in Yangon. Human life is colorful. Eating is just one aspect of it. If you want to fully experience it, you must become an ordinary person. Otherwise, you will be like now, living in loneliness. For an ordinary person, family, love, and friendship seem to be indispensable. To be honest, although you and Tian Xiang both have powerful strength, do you know what happiness is? Happiness. Cao looked at Nian Bing blankly. Obviously, he didn't have a deep understanding of this word. Yes, happiness. Happiness is a feeling. Everyone has a different feeling for Zhao Hongju, but if you can have this feeling, it is definitely the most beautiful thing for human beings. Perhaps when you're eating the food that I made, you felt blissful. You have to gradually experience it yourself. Cao nodded and looked at Nian Bing, said with a smile, "I can be sure that I feel very happy now." Nian Bing, thank you. Do you know, I'm a little reluctant to let you go now. I want you to stay here with Tian Xiang and me. Nian Bing shook her head and said, "I am sorry. If you treat me as a friend, let me go. In Yangon, there are people waiting for me. I always miss them. What's more, there are too many things I want to do but haven't done. The future is beautiful. Cao, I believe that one day you and Tian Xiang will be able to obtain true happiness. Your lives are eternal. This time will not be too long. I firmly believe in this. I am really sorry. When the chapters were divided, the chapter count was heavy. There were 180 chapters. As a result, one chapter was missing when I uploaded it. In order to upload the order, I could only delete the chapter in the morning and upload it again. Friends who have already read the Super Tian Yin Acupoint do not need to subscribe tomorrow morning. I am really sorry." Cao smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't force you. You know, after so many years, this is the first time I've received a favor from someone. I finally understand why those dwarves were so moved after eating your food. These dishes don't just represent food, they represent hope, and, at the same time, it's also a kind of happiness. Thank you. I will repay you sooner or later. Although we haven't been together for a long time, you've made me feel like I'm a human, not a god. It feels good to be a human. This kind of relaxed taste should be what Tian Xiang and I have been pursuing." Nian Bing smiled and said, "That's right. It is good to be a human. There are countless gods on this god's continent, but which one of them is happy? This includes you and the 3 true gods. However, you are all immortal gods. There will always be a chance to feel happy." Cao said, "I have received your favor. There are some things I should tell you. In fact, you know, Tian Xiang and I have been showing weakness." Nian Bing was surprised and said, "Showing weakness? Could it be that your strength is enough to defeat those 3 fellows?" Cao shook his head and said, "No, that's not it. Our strength is indeed not as good as theirs. What I mean by showing weakness is how they feel about us. As the 3 true gods, they're indeed very powerful. However, they're not based on the human body. There's a certain gap between the human body and that of dragons. Think about it. Even dragons will die after 30,000 years, let alone humans. The current situation on the gods' continent was formed about 20,000 years ago. Maybe it was less than 20,000 years ago. The first batch of gods had already died long ago. Why is this? It is because the limit of the human body is only 10,000 years old. No matter how strong you are, you will die when you are 10,000 years old. Those three guys are no exception. The reason why they are still alive, it is because every 10,000 years they have to change their bodies. They use a special method to transfer their souls and abilities to another perfect body. They will expel the other party's soul and take over the body for their own use. This process is very dangerous. If they were not strong enough, they would have been in trouble. However, although this method of taking over other people's bodies can maintain their lives, there is also a disadvantage. It is because of the fusion of souls. As a result, their spiritual power is unable to reach the strongest level. They are always behind us in terms of spiritual power. It is just that Tian Xiang and I have never shown that our spiritual power is stronger than theirs. This makes them think that we also need to change our bodies. They are men, so it is much easier for them to find new body. Tian Xiang and I are more perfect, and we have two souls in one body. It is too difficult to find a new body. Therefore, they think that we are constantly deteriorating. Every 10,000 years, we would deliberately change our appearance to make this illusion more obvious. Therefore, although Tian Xiang and I are no longer as strong as them, we have an advantage in terms of spiritual power. If we want to defeat them, in a sense, we must rely on spiritual power. When I found that your spiritual power has great potential, I chose you to help us. Nianbing looked at Cao and said, "So what you mean is that you and Tian Xiang don't need to change bodies?" Cao smiled and said, "You are very smart. This is the key to the problem. I've said it before. Tian Xiang and I are a little more advanced than those three. Our souls and bodies haven't completely fused, but we can't be considered as humans anymore. On the surface, there is not much difference between us and them. But in fact, our origin is energy. This human body is just a condensation of various elements. It can change at any time. Otherwise, how can Tian Xiang and I coexist in life and death? Our souls are very special. That is why we can maintain energy and transform it at any time. Therefore, we don't have the problems that they need to face. For so many years, we are still the original gods of emotions." Nianbing's heart was moved. She smiled and said, "Then your current appearance is definitely not your original appearance. I want to see what you look like. Like Tian Xiang?" Cao nodded gently and said, "The appearance that Tian Xiang let you see is our true appearance. It's just that it is slightly different. What she let you see is just our appearance. It doesn't merge with our aura. Otherwise, the real gods of emotions should look like ordinary humans. They have no aura of life, nor aura of death. Although the real situation is that we can't merge these two kinds of energy, we can do it on the surface. Don't forget, we are perfect." Nianbing smiled and said, "Tian Xiang's appearance is indeed the most beautiful I have ever seen. It's hard for me to imagine that the Creator could give birth to such a beautiful woman." Cao sighed and said, "This is nothing. We're just bodies formed by the perfect genes. We're not born like this. Well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I have eaten the food you made. Now, it's time to restore your ability." With that, she turned around and was about to float towards a small lake. "Wait a minute." Nianbing suddenly stopped Cao. Cao was stunned. He looked back at Nianbing and said, "Is there anything else?" The reason why Nianbing stopped Cao was that she suddenly felt that Cao and Tian Xiang were very pitiful. The smile on her face became even gentler. "Cao, after you help me restore my vitality, I will definitely stay and help you make more 100-flower dew before I leave. Although I have never seen the 100-flower dew, according to my master, the taste of the 100-flower dew is the most wonderful. The taste of every drop is different. After I leave, you and Tian Xiang only need to drink a drop of the 100-flower dew every day. I think you won't miss my cooking too much. This is the only thing I can do for you." Cao looked at Nianbing. "Aren't you anxious to go back and see your family and friends? Aren't you afraid of wasting time?" Nianbing smiled and said, "My life was given to me by all of you. What's a little delay in time? Cow smiled. It was a smile that came from the heart. Well, we are really friends. It turns out that it feels so good to have friends. If it weren't for the fact that Tianxiang and I have completely opposite auras, which naturally produces a restraining effect, and we have been living together for so many years, maybe we can also become good friends. The green sleeve waved. Nianbing only felt that her body was light. She had been rolled up by Cao's energy. A green energy bridge appeared in the small lake full of vitality. Cao and Nianbing landed directly on the bridge and floated towards the center of the lake. When they arrived above the lake of life, the feeling was obviously different. The surging vitality in the surroundings constantly stimulated Nianbing's spiritual power to protect his body. He was shocked to find that the consumption of his spiritual power was actually more than 3 times as much as before. The rich vitality was constantly stimulating his spiritual world, causing him to feel a little dizzy. Cao took Nianbing to the center of the lake of life before stopping. He turned to Nianbing. Her expression became serious. This lake of life and the lake of death you saw at Tianxiang's place are the 2 most peculiar places on the God's continent. They condense the purest vitality and death auras on the continent, respectively. These 2 pure auras are not very useful to me and Tianxiang. The reason why we have been guarding these 2 types of energy is to find someone who can help us. Your body has been fully baptized by the death aura. Originally, it was an extremely difficult process. But at that time, you were originally a zombie. Coupled with your firm will and strong spiritual power, you actually passed through that difficulty easily. Wait a moment. I will let you enter the spring of life. Because you have been completely changed by the death aura, you will suffer twice as much pain here as you did at the waterfall of death. Don't resist the baptism of the life energy for you. What you have to do is to let go of your body and mind and let the purest life energy wash you. Otherwise, even if you are resurrected, you will lose all senses and become an idiot. I will secretly protect you, but you mainly have to rely on yourself. Do you understand? This is the last checkpoint. As long as you can pass, then there will be a bright path. What lies before you is a broad path. From now on, your cultivation will become much easier than anyone else's. There will be a day when you can reach our level or even surpass us. Nianbing smiled slightly and said, I have already come this far. How can I regret it? Let's start. I am ready. From the moment he left the Yangon continent, his spiritual power was constantly being tempered. His spiritual power and will gradually strengthened, causing his confidence in himself to increase day by day. That confidence came from his own strength. After enduring in the waterfall of death, his mentality had gradually changed. Every time he endured pain, it would bring about an increase in his strength. Now, he was looking forward to it. Cao nodded approvingly. Her big eyes gradually changed. A green light appeared in the depths of her eyes. That was not any negative aura, but the purest life energy. At this moment, in Nianbing's eyes, Cao was almost the representative of purity. Her almost endless life energy rose. The bridge of life under her feet disappeared. A circle of life energy surrounded Nianbing's body. The tree in the center of the lake slowly moved under the influence of the life energy. The calm emerald lake began to change. The slight ripples on the surface of the lake gradually became more intense. A green vortex appeared where the giant tree was originally. The life energy spurted out in a pillar shape, and the green light shot straight into the sky. Cao's eyes shone brightly. He shouted softly, "Go!" With a flash of light, Nianbing's body was thrown into the vortex. Green lightning constantly flashed around Cao's body. Layers of green light constantly rose from the lake of life and condensed towards the vortex. The rotation of the vortex gradually became more intense. The moving tree seemed to be pulled by the vortex and gradually returned to its original position. When it completely covered the vortex, the emerald lake became calm again. However, in the depths of the lake, inside the spring of life, monstrous changes had occurred. Circles of green light in the lake continued to condense towards the center of the spring. Around the tree, a layer of gray color was emitted. Cal looked at the giant tree in front of him and muttered to himself, "Am I asking too much of him?" A black figure floated out from behind him. A gentle voice sounded, "No, we're doing this for his own good. Only by relying on his own strength can he better accept the aura of life and death." Cal, I didn't expect Nian Bing to be so smart. He actually thought that death and life can fuse under certain circumstances. Although this isn't correct, it's already close, isn't it? The one who spoke was Tian Xiang. Although her body was in an illusory state and her death energy was not exposed, she really appeared beside Cao. Hearing Tian Xiang's voice, Cao suddenly became a lot colder. "What do you think our chances of success are?" Tian Xiang shook her head and said, 30%. "That's the best I can do. But this is the only feasible method we can think of after so many years." Cao laughed at himself. "Nian Bing treats us as friends, but we are using him. If he knows this, I wonder what he will think." Yes, life and death can fuse under certain circumstances. We both know what we have in common, but we hid this crucial point from Nian Bing. Tian Xiang remained silent for a while. Then, she sighed and said, "There's nothing we can do about it. This is the only thing we have in common. Don't worry. We won't use this unless we have no other choice. After all, it's very dangerous in itself. If we succeed, we can become the strongest in the world with a level 18. But if we fail, then he won't be the only one who will be destroyed. That day won't come quickly. We brought him life again. This can be considered his sacrifice." Cao sighed and said, "The god of order and the others are not good people. What about us? As the god of emotions with the greatest fluctuation of emotions, what are we? We are just despicable uses.